I call the meeting to order. Will the secretary please read the roll?
I will, Mr. Chairman, starting with Chairman Anderson.
Present.
Ms. Bolson-Alvarez is excused. Mr. Brinkerhoff.
Present.
Mr. Delory is present. Councilmember O'Sullivan.
Here.
Ms. McNeil is excused, as is Vice Chair Zucker. Mr. Bell.
Here.
Mr. Formicelli.
Here.
Mr. Stern.
Here.
And as our professionals, you have a quorum. You may proceed.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Matthew is acting as acting secretary tonight, and Stephanie is there with him. Stephanie will be joining November 28th as your first official meeting. So we see in some of the work that's been done, some of your footprint is here already, so thank you very much. Very good job here. So we'll read the adequate notice statement. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the board in preparation of the 2022 annual meeting notice, which sets forth the date, time, and place of this meeting, and by properly posting such notice and forwarding that notice to those designated newspapers and persons requesting meeting notices. Please be advised that this is a non-smoking building. Fire exits are to my right and your left and at the back of the room. This is a scheduled meeting of the planning board. There may be other meetings currently running simultaneously with this meeting. If you are not here for the Summit Planning Board, your meeting may be upstairs or elsewhere in the building. Let's go to our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, I was wondering if we could just make a modest change to the agenda and move the meeting minutes forward to be looked at and approved, I guess, since everyone is here. Did everybody get the meeting minutes that Stephanie sent out today? Good, okay. Well, we had a very long meeting, and these meeting minutes indicate such. But I really have no comments at this point. Anyone have any comments, additions, or deletions to the meeting minutes for the September 27th meeting? Yeah.
I wasn't at the meeting, but the notes say that the following members were excused. I hope I was excused.
Oh.
I was fired or something. Something said I know that.
All right. We'll make that correction, Jay. Thanks.
And I was at the meeting and voted, but I don't think I was registered as voting in favor.
That's right. And you were inducted, essentially. Yes. Okay. Good. All right. And any other additions, deletions, corrections, etc. Okay. So can we have a voice vote, Mr. Secretary?
Okay, all those in favor?
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, maybe if we can get a motion second first.
Now, that would be an excellent idea. May we have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected and adjusted?
Who motioned?
I didn't hear the first motion.
I thought it was the first one.
Okay, well, you're going to be first, and someone else will be second.
And who seconded it?
Jay did.
Oh, okay. Okay, voice vote, all those in.
No, I wasn't even.
Oh,
One other than Jay.
I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, yeah, sorry. Okay, so we got that squared away. All right, now we can do our voice vote.
All right, are you sure? I'm just
I think
kidding.
so, yes.
Oh, excellent.
You have legal backing, go ahead.
Okay, lovely. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
And abstentions for any who weren't there this evening, that evening who are here this evening.
Yeah,
Abstaining?
okay, great, thanks. All right, so we have two public hearings tonight. We have the application for 57 DeForest before us, and I think we'll start with that there. And is the applicant here, or counsel to represent the applicant here this evening?
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, while they're approaching, I did have an opportunity to review the notice for this particular application, found the notice content to be sufficient, found it to be timely served, certified mail on October 14, published on October 13, both at least 10 days prior to this evening. Therefore, it's my opinion the board does have jurisdiction pursuant to the notice to hear and decide the application this evening.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Warner. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
Good evening. My name is Ken Leiby. I am the attorney for Brain Train Learning Center, LLC, which is the applicant on this application. We are seeking final minor site plan approval for a change of use with respect to 57 DeForest Avenue, which also involves a parking variance. 57 DeForest Avenue is owned by Martha Yuko, who is sitting at the I'm sorry. Yes, the property is owned by Martha Yuko, who's sitting at the table here to my right. And she is the executive director of Brain Train Learning Center. Brain Train Learning Center was founded by her mother, Bernadette, better known as Bunny Yuko. And Martha will provide testimony as to the background of the business. 57 DeForest is located in the ORC zone, which permits mixed-use properties. In this case, residential and office space. Ms. Yuko lives at the property and will be bringing the business of Brain Train Learning Center into that property if this application is approved. Property is currently and has been for a number of years used only as a residence, although there is some anecdotal evidence within the building that it was at one time used for doctor's offices. Ms. Yuko purchased the property in May of this year. She proposes to use parts of the first floor of the property for the Learning Center. Brain Train, as you will hear, is in the business of counseling their clients and training them to improve their cognitive processing. It's actually a process of training the brain. And this is done in a process, as you will hear, of one-on-one programs. This is a 5-bedroom house, which under the RSIS requires 3 residential parking spaces. It has a 2-car garage, which under the RSIS provides that parking. The office use will occupy slightly less than 1,200 square feet of the first floor. And that generates a need under the ordinance for 4 additional parking spaces. Those parking spaces, you will hear, cannot be provided on site. The applicant seeks variance relief pursuant to NJSA 4055D 70C with respect to those 4 additional spaces. It believes that the needs of its business can be easily met by available public parking. And the applicant will testify that they are willing to purchase business parking permits for the staff. There will be some interior modifications made to the property. There will be the conversion of an existing half bathroom to a handicap bathroom and enlargement of 2 doorways to provide for handicap access. On the exterior of the property, they propose to create a handicap parking space on the left side of the driveway in front of the garage, and to create a turnaround area actually in the front yard where vehicles can pick up and drop off clients and can turn around so that they can go out of the driveway facing down into the street. I have 2 witnesses, Martha Yuko and Rich Keller, who will be offering expert testimony as both an engineer and a planner. May I proceed?
Yeah, please.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to swear in all the witnesses
Yes, please,
at
that
once?
would be great. Thank you.
And I'll
Mr.
swear in
Warren.
our board professionals as well, our planner and engineer. If you'll all raise your right hand. Do all 4 of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you all. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So please proceed.
Martha, why don't you come up to the left now? They don't want to hear from me, they want to hear from you. Ms. Yuko, could you please tell the board what your relationship is to the business and give us a bit of background as to what the business does and what its history is?
Absolutely. My name is Martha Yuko. You heard, I live at 57 Forest, and I work as the executive director at the Brain Train Learning Center. My mother started the business a little over 30 years ago, and I grew up living it. And basically what we do is we help kids learn how to process the world. We noticed that a lot of kids who are struggling in school and in other parts of life were having a hard time processing what was going on around them, and that creates frustration. And often they get labeled as lazy or acting out. So we created, or my mother created, through tons of training and lots of different programs, put together a program for each child individually that helped train their processing skills. So they help visual processing, auditory processing, critical thinking, executive functioning, things like that to help them just be more comfortable in the world. And you know, a lot of times they come to us because of school, but it's fun to then get the emails 3 weeks later and say, my kid just hit a home run. Where did that come from? Never thought that would happen. Because it really applies to all walks of life and how they experience the world. Is that all I was supposed to say? I can talk about it all day, so you don't have to stop.
No. But why don't you, just so the board has a feel for you, give the board the benefit of your credentials.
Yes. So I, after learning from my mother for most of my childhood, went to Dartmouth and got a minor in education and a master's in German studies. And then after teaching in a charter school in the South Bronx, I went to Harvard and got a master's in literacy and language acquisition.
Okay.
And then again, worked with my mother for a long time and got a lot more training there.
What will the hours of operation of brain training be at 57 DeForest?
So besides, obviously there are always exceptions, but typically we work from 9 to 1. We have children coming to us from 9 to 1, and then 3 to 6:30. And then occasionally for very motivated kids who are in sports and need extra help, we'll allow them, and typically just with me, to do early morning or evenings.
And how long are the clients in session? How long will they be on the premises?
Typically it's 1 hour and it's one-on-one instruction and training to help them really dive in.
And how many clients do you expect to have on the property? Well, what's the largest number you expect to have on the property regularly?
Typically it's 4, maybe 5 once a month, but we have 4, you know, in those peak hours at 3:30, right after school.
And what about staff?
So if there's 4 kids, there's 4 clinicians.
And how does that work? How many people do you actually count on your staff now?
So we have 6, in addition to the 2 of us. My mother is slowly retiring, but we are both there. And then there's one who does only remote now since COVID. He just does virtual sessions. There's another one who works at a school 2 blocks away at Kent Place, and she walks over twice a week and just does after school twice a week. You know, there's one that only does morning sessions. There's one that only does 2 that only do afternoon sessions, and a couple times a week. So it's a fun job trying to keep track of it all, but it ends up working out to about 4.
Are any of your staff full-time?
No. I mean, there's one that's close. The closest one is about 6 hours a day, 4 days a week.
And typically, how do, I keep putting this in the present tense, but you're not using 57 DeForest yet, but in your history, how do the students or clients arrive and depart from the facility?
So the majority of the clients, their parents will drop them off, and they will come in and have their hour session, and then their parents swing by and pick them up at the end. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. There have been stages where we've encouraged, you know, some parents to come 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late, but it rarely has ever been an issue.
And what about your staff? How will they get to 57 DeForest?
So one will walk, which is their place, so that's easy enough. There were, you know, 3 or 4 when they come will drive. One is debating now that we're closer to the train station whether he will take the train out from the city. He commutes from the city right now.
And would you be willing to purchase business parking passes for your staff?
Absolutely.
Okay, can we get Tom Bayo's plan up? Sheet, is that sheet A2? Yes. This is the architect's plan, which was a part of your packet of materials for this application. What we have up on the screen is sheet A2, which shows the first floor of the house.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the letter by August 5th, 2022, actually dated August 5th, 2022, which may also be the last revised date.
Yes.
Okay, and sheet A2, and it hasn't been changed in any format, so we don't have to mark it as an exhibit, it can just be referenced.
This is the same that was submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Could you walk the board through this exhibit with respect to the areas of the first floor that will be used by the business? I would suggest that you start with the soon-to-be, hopefully, handicapped bathroom in the rear of the house.
And I'm sorry, this is sheet A1, correct?
I believe it's A2.
Then I got the wrong one.
Yeah, ours is labeled A1.
Ours seems to say A1 for this page. Same date, August 5th, 2022.
One of your sheets was before it
If it helps.
Oh, it is A1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we have a C1,
Okay.
then an A1, then an
C1
A2.
and A1,
Okay,
I'm
Thank
wrong
you.
yeah.
again.
Thank you.
Okay, now that we've got it identified, could you please walk the board through the areas of the house that will be used and point out the modifications that are going to be made to the existing structure?
Yes. So, start, there's a bathroom in the rear that's being converted to a handicap bathroom.
And there's a half bathroom there now, correct?
Correct. It's just
Um,
being made a little bit bigger
Go
to
ahead.
accommodate. And then there's a pathway going through the existing family room, which will still be a family room and a kitchen. And to get to, so the dining room here and the living room will both be offices. And then these two on the right, which were, as Ken mentioned earlier, seem to have been doctor's offices in the past, will also be 2 offices. So those 4 areas will be used as offices, and then foyers.
Okay, and there are a couple of doorways being altered, aren't there?
This, right here between the kitchen and the stairwell, we needed 2 inches to be handicap accessible. And then the front door is already wide enough to be handicap accessible. So the porch, for handicap accessibility, they go along the porch and come to this entrance here, and those stairs will be replaced with a lift.
Okay, and there's also,
And then, yeah, the handicap parking spot.
yeah, and there's also a door modification with respect to the bathroom, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. There was a half bath and a small closet. So the wall is moved down. And the door will be made slightly wider to accommodate the bedroom.
And there are no other areas of the house that you plan to use for the business? Can you describe any existing exterior lighting?
There are lights on the existing garage. facing down the driveway. There are 3 floodlights along the deck in the back, and then in the front, there is a light by the front door, and then there's a street light there that shines in my window every day, so I love it very bright. Right in front of there. I think in terms of the new, the drop-off area is being proposed. We have to see once some of the trees are down and all of that, what the lighting looks like, and plan to adjust as necessary.
Will you agree to provide any necessary lighting where it's required by code?
Absolutely.
And will you confirm that you will comply with all building codes, fire codes with respect to these modifications?
Absolutely.
And any other modifications that might be required because of the change of use?
Yes.
There was noted in some of the comments, there was a comment about the trench drain in front of the garage. Do you have any idea where that drains to?
I do not. It was there when I moved in, so I would hesitate to speculate on where it goes
Okay.
without digging a lot of holes.
And will you consider the use of native plants in any new plantings made
Absolutely.
on the property? Thank you. I don't have any further questions. The board has questions.
Any members of the boards have questions of this witness? Yeah.
Can I ask just one question regarding accessibility for handicap? If one was to come up the vertical lift, are you able to walk around for someone with
Yes.
in a wheelchair or
Yes.
a challenge to be able to walk through, across the porch and into the front door?
Yes.
As its current occupant, where do you park your vehicle?
In the garage.
In the garage?
Rick, you had a question?
Yeah, a few, and they relate to parking and planting.
Yeah.
David, three-piece. I think one of the comments was the handicap spot blocks access to the garage, but if it's your vehicle that's on that side of the garage, there's no problem?
There's no problem. Because the other side of the garage will be my mother, so we can always, I can grab her car if I need to go.
There's some certain logic to that. And I don't know if it's a fair question, but could you estimate how many people among your clientele arrive in a wheelchair or with a walker or with other?
I think in close to 30 years, there's been one.
Okay, so the fact that it's a lift and not a ramp isn't onerous or? Right. Really happy to hear that native plants will be considered. There's no landscape plan. The site plan indicates the removal of skip laurels and replanting of cypress. Is there a landscape idea in mind?
Yes, I think the skip laurels, there's talk of whether we
Yeah.
lower them versus removing them, and the landscaper suggested they might be too big, but we'd give it a shot. And otherwise, we would put something instead. And the crepe myrtle, again, I think the plan was to move it back closer to the house. We were pretty adamant about wanting to keep it if possible, but if not, we would want to put something else there.
And my last question, maybe it's more for the engineering set. On drawing 4, there's a great detail showing pervious paving. And there was an assumption that the new turnaround would be, but it's not labeled that way.
It absolutely is, yes. I mean, not labeled, sorry, I'm not
Yeah.
correcting you, but yes.
No,
I
but
already went to the
there's no
place
other
and looked at them
debate.
and found the most impervious.
All right, I think that's very commendable, and thank you for that.
I'm sorry, can I get clarification? You are stipulating to, pervious
Yes.
pavers? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, from this side of the room, Paul?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions, mostly relating to parking. So just out of curiosity, what are the ages of the students?
They range from 3 to 19.
19. So if there's a driving age student, would he park there as well?
Yes, and he could park in the meters across the street.
And
And then
how does the driveway work when, and how how long for like pickup and drop off? Obviously for a 3-year-old, could be a lot longer than a 12-year-old, right?
Definitely.
What's
So-
like the flow of the driveway so people can stop, get out?
Yeah, so the 3-year-olds are fairly rare, but usually it's just if a sibling has someone that you can already tell. But most of them are very quick, and the parents are trying to get their kids to the next place. The 3-year-olds are the ones who would want to park and walk over, and would like to park on those metered spots. There's
Yeah.
lots nearby as well. But from living there for the past couple of months, I've rarely seen those metered spots.
And where's the business operating now?
So our lease was up, and so we are renting space in the church across the street.
Okay.
So we have a pretty good idea of the flow and everything.
Danny?
That was my question,
Okay.
where are they currently operating? Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Yeah, Paul?
Hours of operation, I thought I heard, it sounded like, I don't think the days were mentioned, is it Monday through Friday, or is it beyond that?
Yeah, again, for kids who are really motivated, we maybe do 9 or 10 on Saturday morning, and that's it.
One other comment I made to follow up on Rick's comments about landscaping, and I know there's not a landscape plan per se, but may I suggest you chat with our city forester, John Linson. He's very helpful, and I think you'll find it worthwhile.
Absolutely.
I make that as a suggestion more than anything else. I encourage you to pick up on that as you develop the landscape.
Can you just repeat the name, please?
John, his first name is Linson, Linson.
Thank you.
Can I ask one?
Yeah, sure, Rick.
It looks right-sized for your current operations and level of activity. If the goal were to expand,
So,
at some point, or if the pressures from clientele, more people, word of mouth?
it's a very good question. My general business strategy, my goal is to put myself out of business by helping our country have a better education system.
Good luck
And
with that.
there is definitely some limitations to expanding too much, just because of the expertise that my mother brings and I bring to the equation. That we try not to dilute what's going on. So I think there have been times where it's been slightly larger, but it's never looking to make it too big, because I think it would not be as good of a product.
Any of the board professionals, Chris or Jess, do you have any questions of this witness?
The only question I had was, is there any requirement from a state agency to review your building plans?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay. Okay. That was it.
Joe, any questions?
No, we had 4 or 5 questions in our report, and the board members asked them all.
Mr. Warner, you must have some.
Just a couple, I often do, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Inquisitive nature. The hours of operation, I got 9 to 1, then I got 3 to 6:30. Is that Monday through Friday?
Monday through Thursday. Friday is more 9 to 1 and maybe 1. It's a little quieter.
I'm sorry, you're trailing off.
Sorry, 9 to 1 and then maybe 3 to 4.
3 to
4 to 3.
Okay. And then you mentioned something about early mornings, evenings possibly, and weekends. Can you be a little clearer with respect to how
Yes.
often and what days and times you are referring to?
So occasionally we will have a student who's motivated and wants to come in the morning before school. So I will see them maybe Tuesday. Right now I have one, or most recently, right now it's just Tuesdays at 7:45, so they then can get to school on time afterwards. And then 6:30, trying to think of right now examples, but they're just kids who have sports occasionally will want to come at 7 or 7:30.
Right. I
Most
guess
of
for the
my-
benefit
most
of
of
the
my-
board, I'm just trying to get some clarity as to what the earliest and the latest may be on weekdays, what, if anything, there may be on weekends, the frequency, so that they have a baseline to work with.
Absolutely.
Not that the hours of operation are the only or primary consideration, but for the benefit of the board.
Yes, I think 7 a.m. is probably the earliest, and I have done till 8:30.
So 7 a.m. on a weekday and
I have done
8:30
nine.
p.m. on a week,
Correct that.
Night?
9 p.m. on a weeknight has happened.
or
It's
9
very
p.m.
rare.
on a weeknight? Okay, and what about on a Saturday, and what about on a Sunday?
Saturday, Can be as early as 9 and as late as 1. And Sunday is, 5 times a year. It's very rare.
5 times a year, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And that would
4
be,
PM maybe,
okay.
just if I'm away for the weekend and we cancel a Friday, then I will make it up.
And do I understand correctly that you could have as many as 4 or more staff members along with as many as 4 or more clients, quote unquote, at a time?
So 4 is generally the max. I
4
would
is
say
max,
5
so-
has happened, but very rare.
Okay, so 4 staff, 4 students or clients, and that would be exclusive of both you and your mother, so there could be 10 people altogether, correct, at one time?
I guess that's possible if we're doing, upstairs working out. If we're not working, that is possible.
And again, just for the benefit of the board with respect to parking and other issues that may be of interest. I didn't have anything else.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just one more quick,
Yeah,
if you don't mind,
may I ask you
Mr.
to
Chair. As
ask
the
me?
owner of the, or executive director, do you know what kind of waste the business produces?
Interesting question. In terms of garbage pickup, I would say there were 2 garbage cans that picked up how frequently at the last place? Twice a week?
2 cans
2
twice a
cans,
week.
yeah. And they weren't always full. But that's also residential, yeah,
And that includes the household waste?
yes.
Do you provide any food or drink to the clients when they're there?
Occasionally, a snack or water. Yes.
You go.
Yep,
There was mention in Krista's letter that there's a front stone wall that might be slightly over the front property line, and that may want to obtain an agreement with the city to maintain the wall in its location or allow the owner to repair or replace it if deemed necessary. That
Chris,
should
do
be
you have any
stipulation.
comment on that at all?
Yeah, there is a wall, stone wall that does go over the property line, obviously on DeForest Avenue, so, I just would defer to Chris as far as what she thinks the board should do is, regarding that,
Okay.
as far as the maintenance of it.
Mr. Warner, any
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
Well, my thought is that it's a good recommendation, in my opinion, by the zoning officer, and the question is would the applicant stipulate the same?
Yeah, they will.
Thank you.
Okay, I have just one question. Mr. Levy, you indicated that the applicant would essentially meet all code requirements. There is a note in here by Ralph Maritato, our construction official, with regard to fire issues, which actually I've not seen before. This note in all the years I've been doing this. Could you just address that for us?
I hadn't seen that one before either, when I looked it up
Yeah.
in the administrative code, and there's a possibility when there's a change of use, and I don't know much about what I'm talking about right now, but there's a possibility when there's a change of use that there may be some required other changes to the existing structure for fire code reasons. Some things may have to be upgraded.
Okay.
And if that occurs, we will do that. That's a condition, compliance with the law is a condition the applicant accepts.
That's right.
So,
And then,
it was,
Chris, is that?
and I called, I actually spoke with the architect this morning
Oh,
about
okay.
that.
Yeah.
He wasn't aware of anything. He said, well, we may need to put in some exit lights and some stuff like that. That will all be worked out when the construction plans
Okay.
are submitted.
Is that something, Chris, that you've seen before?
You're changing the use, so there could be some required changes. Maybe a fire door, you mentioned exit lights, there's a possibility, but you have to defer to the building department on that.
Okay, all right.
There's also, if I may, Mr. Chairman, a reference to a key box per the ordinance
Oh,
as
right,
well,
yeah.
so I assume that'll be part of the stipulated.
Yes, the applicant will install an Xbox.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So here we are. Any members of the public here have a question of this
I have one more
witness?
question.
All right.
Is there, and I apologize if I missed, is there anything that's changing in terms of signage? Is there anything that's being put out front that?
Not at this time.
Yeah, at this time, we're not making any application for
Just wanted
sign.
to get this part done. And then I'll
Okay.
put that.
All right. Once again, any members of the public here to have any questions of this witness? All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Levy, you want to put your planner on at this point? Is that what you're?
Yes.
Okay. So we need to assess this gentleman's qualifications.
Well, I'm sure council will voir dire him extensively
Oh,
and
yeah.
listen to them extensively. I think I might know them, frankly.
Yeah, you might be able to recite them, I'm not
There you
sure.
go, possible.
Well, it looks like he just started in the business, so.
It's a little rough. Mr. Keller, could you please give the board the benefit of your credentials as an engineer and as a planner?
Certainly. I'm a licensed engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. I've been licensed as both for about 40 years, since 1989. I hold a master's in architecture with a concentration in water resources and environmental engineering. That is from Rutgers University. And I also hold a master's of architecture with a concentration in urban planning and design, and that is from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I was also a professor in the graduate and undergraduate divisions in the architecture school for approximately 11 years, focusing on planning and site design. I have appeared before this board, approximately 110 boards throughout the state of New Jersey, both Summit Planning Board and Board of Adjustment, most recently the Board of Adjustment this year. I have provided planning consulting services to the Borough of Caldwell commercial projects, the Board of Adjustment, and I was also, for 3 years, I was the Board of Adjustment and Planning Board engineer to the Township of Long Hill. My licenses are in good effect. In fact, I'm leaving tomorrow to do 14 hours of credit for my next license, so all good.
Okay. Very good, thanks. Any members of the board have any question, Mr. Casey? All right, very good, thanks.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I offered Mr. Keller as an expert in the
Mr.
field
Keller,
of
yeah,
engineering
thank
and planning.
As an engineer and planner, I believe he's been accepted by the board in
Yep.
both
Any,
capacities.
have any comments, questions? No. Okay, yeah, please, Mr. Keller.
Thank you.
Mr. Keller, would you please take the board through the site plan for, the site plan proposal and the various zoning and planning considerations in this change of use application?
I'm actually going to start briefly with a neighborhood exhibit, which really contains most of the site plan information. It's kind of a combination of pages 1, 2, and 3 of our, or 1, 2, and 3 of our site plan. It's labeled neighborhood exhibit.
This was not part of our
Yep.
package.
A1 will do.
Yep, this would be
Thank you.
A1.
And
It
neighborhood
is-
exhibit, thank you.
Yep, it is labeled Neighborhood Exhibit Brain Train Learning Center. It is dated October 24th, 2022. And basically, we've taken the survey and site plan and area maps and superimposed it over an orthorectified aerial photograph that was taken back in March 11th of this year. So it is an accurate representation, a scaled representation of the site as it exists today. And then we've superimposed the proposed changes as well. The property, as you are aware, is on the north side of DeForest Avenue, about 85 feet to the west of Hillside Avenue, and about 235 feet to the east of Norwood Avenue, and that is the corner of the Kent Place School, where actually one of the teachers comes from. The property is 77 feet wide, about 110 feet deep, contains 8,714 square feet, and is located, as was indicated, in the ORC Office Residence Character Zone, where 8,000 square feet is required. The property itself is occupied by a 3-story Victorian house. It was built in about 1890. It has a beautiful very large wraparound porch across the front. It does have a stone wall, which is not really shown on here, but it's shown on
Could
our...
you slow down, please?
That, thank you.
You're going too fast.
I get excited by these projects, I apologize. My wife sometimes texts me, and I feel the text, she's like, slow down, I'm watching. At any rate, there's a stone wall that runs along the DeForest Avenue that divides a little elevation change and some stairs up into the property proper. And on top of that, as was mentioned, is a dense skip laurel hedge, which I'll show a photograph of shortly. There's a driveway along the westerly side of the property that gives access to a 2-car garage at the rear of the site facing DeForest Avenue. And as was indicated by our attorney, the house was most recently used as a single-family dwelling, although there was some evidence that it was a medical office building at one time. I would point out that the owner does plan to locate her, what I think she's described as a fairly low-intensity use to the front half of the first floor as she went over, and that's permitted in the ORC zone. And just for the record, I'm sure you're aware, the purpose of the ORC zone is to allow for conversion of existing residential structures for office uses while preserving the historic character, scale, and features of the building and streetscape. That's exactly what we're doing here. One of the permitted uses is mixed-use structures of office suites and one or more residential units. Residential units and office suites shall contain a minimum of 500 square feet. So this is exactly what the master plan anticipates for this zone. And it's a way of preserving these very large, old, historic homes built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, which are larger than you'd often expect to see in so close to the downtown. And it's a way of preserving the character of these. And it was really foremost on our minds as we developed the site plan, was to be as minimally invasive as possible on the project. And as is shown on the slide, given that imperative to maintain the existing dwelling, we looked to do no additions to the existing house, and we wanted to make sure that we maintained the exact view of this property as it exists today. We recently did work at 51 DeForest Avenue, and that was a property that had really been abused over the years, and that took a lot of restoration to get it back. This property didn't suffer from that abuse. It actually is fairly intact. It's got good form. The wraparound porch is beautiful, and certainly evident of the time when it was built. The garage is somewhat newer. Certainly, they didn't have garages back in the 1890s. Maybe a stable, but that's a newer structure, and it does face the street. Unlike when we first brought the idea to Krista Anderson, she referred us to the property next door, which is the Diana Hoffman's old architecture office building. In fact, in the zoning ordinance, it is the photo that sits in the section on ORC zone as to what we want to see in that zone. And Diana said, you might want to consider somewhat of the same thing. Well, actually, unfortunately, our house has the wraparound porch, and because of the street angle, we actually don't have enough depth to provide parking in the front. And we thought parking would really take away the character, unlike Diana Hoffman's building next door, which has opportunities for landscape in the front. Our existing building is much too close. Unless we took off the covered porch, there's really no way to get an ingress and an egress. And when we looked at going into the rear of the property, there was really no way to get beyond the existing garage and create parking opportunities in the back. And we really didn't want to change the character of the backyard as it sits next to the multifamily residential use behind us or the single family to the right. So we really looked at trying to work with the existing driveway to the extent possible. And what we also decided was, since we were doing the renovations and there's an ADA requirement for any commercial property to have an ADA compliant space, we looked for where to put that. And we did the area where I have the turnaround is explicitly not intended to be the handicap spot. We put it in the back because the way it's striped, you can still get access to one half of the garage. And as is shown, you can actually slide an extra car in there. So you actually can get 4 cars on this site, not 3, relatively easily. It doesn't meet the full dimensional requirements of the ordinance, but you can certainly easily fit one, as is evidenced by the white SUV parked, and it could even get a little closer and turn. And so you can still get an extra parking space. I would point out in response to Mr. Stern's comment, just a clarification, or his question, clarification, when that 19-year-old arrives, they will not park in the front of the property, and they will only a handicapped client would park in the back. So anybody who comes to the site would be expected to either be dropped off, or they would use one of the 8 90-minute parking spaces, 15 minutes free, 90-minute parking spaces in the front, or as is shown on this, you're about 320 feet, about a football field away from the DeForest lot number 1. It's about another 300 feet to DeForest 2 for employees. The one that doesn't come from the Kent Place over on the left, they can actually park up in the K lot, which is Maple Street, and that is about, I think it was about 825-foot walk up to Maple. It's about the same distance to walk over down Woodland and down over to the entrance into the tier garden. So there are plenty of opportunities for permit parking for employees that are located relatively well. And like any property that's close to your CRBD, you really want those moms and dads to be taking the 90-minute parking and then walking over into the downtown for a cup of coffee or doing some shopping. They're really meant to be a symbiotic relationship between the ORC zone and the B zone and the CRBD zone, which is really one of the guiding principles of your master plan. That front area, we actually, because that's a little bit tight on the backup, we actually provided an 18-foot deep space with 20 feet of backup. And you normally like to see about 23 to 24 feet of backup. So to accommodate that, we made it a little wider. And again, this would be signed, as shown in our site plan. It would be for drop-off and pickup only. So anticipated.
I'm sorry, did you say signed?
Yes, it would be signed. There would be signage.
Drop-off and pickup. Okay.
Drop-off and pickup only. So I don't know if we have a detail for the sign, but the sign is called on our site plan. And in terms of stormwater management, we have a total net increase of 502 square feet. You'll see on our existing, if you compare our site data table, I'll go to in a second, existing versus proposed, it comes to 550, but we had the existing, we forgot to update it. And I actually saw that before it went out, but I did the environmental thing and didn't want to print up 20 new sets, so I left it and figured I would explain. But the proposed coverage is correct, and there is a net increase of 502 square feet, and pretty much 490 feet of that is in the turnout area, which would be permeable pavement, and the permeable pavers would be set over a stone infiltration field where they would store the water. The reason we also call out for a depressed curb on the lower or the side of the, let's see if this works. We call for a depressed curb in that area, and that is so that and it's slightly sloping towards that direction, and that is so that when the stone underneath the permeable pavement fills up, it'll actually just filter across and through the planted area rather than concentrating into the driveway, which would then put concentrated flow across the sidewalk at the driveway. So we thought it was, we may need a waiver to do depressed curbing. We're providing granite curbing, but it is depressed upon that section, but for a specific reason. The only other increase is an impervious area. There's about 25 square feet that's associated with a little bit of additional sidewalk to accommodate the lift at the rear of the porch. And we were very careful to place that at the rear of the porch so that it would not be seen from the street. And the handicap, as is shown on our sheet 4, the grades are such that when we look at the grades, it does not exceed the permitted percentage slope for handicap as it exists. And the ramp that connects to the house to the lift also is ADA compliant. So the design actually works, and we thought it was an elegant solution to provide for the one time in 30 years that they get a handicapped person. We need to do it so the client is not exposed to an ADA lawsuit. We thought it was really the most benign place to put it, and actually the most functional place to put it. We looked at handicap ramps. We would have had to do a lot more disturbance in the front, maybe disturb the porch, or take up most of the green space behind the house in order to effectuate a handicap ramp. And so it was decided to do the lift in the configuration that we proposed. I would point out that, and I'll get to the comments from both engineering and planning in a second, we do provide 31% more detention than is required. And if we need be, we are seeking a waiver for the flush curb on the downhill side.
For the flush curb
on the downhill side. If I just go quickly to, but I don't want to speak quickly, go quickly to A2, and this is photo board number 1. It's an exhibit dated October 24th, 2022, and except as noted, all the photographs were taken today. And photograph number 1, this is actually one of the older ones from when the house was under contract back in April of 2022. And you can see that the skip laurels are rather dense, and they're elevated up. And the reason we're calling for those to be removed is because we want to make sure that as a car is coming west along, oh, let me get that. Along DeForest, that they can see if there's a car parked and maneuvering out, or a child that's either coming down. While we hope that the child would come down, if they weren't being picked up, they would come down the front stairs. If someone was walking down the driveway, there'd be ample visibility for a driver coming west along there. And we did, our licensed landscape architect
And
looked
we
at,
did what?
our licensed landscape architect looked at the plantings between the laurel hedge and the house and found them actually to be fairly well done and just need a little maintenance. And so our plan is actually to remove the skip laurels. We could do something that was maintainable, some kind of juniper that didn't get any more than, say, a foot tall would be manageable, and then would certainly block any view of the parking surface to pedestrians walking down the street, but we actually want a little visibility. Right next door, that's the property at 61 DeForest, the old Diana Hoffman, the poster child for the ORC zone. To the right of it is a multifamily house that sits at 2 Hillside. I also wanted to show, this was a photograph taken today. You can see easily there are 3 cars fit across there, so that if you imagine the left car would be the handicap, the white car would be the striped area, the right car would be a 3rd car, and certainly the 2 cars on the right, either where the handicap striping is or the Jeep is parked, you could easily get 1 car out of the driveway. So if, and as Ms. Yuko said, if her car is parked on the left, the second employee that arrives that day is going to be her mom, who's going to park on the right. If one of them has to go out, they can take mom's car. In all likelihood, except for that one time in 30 years, they'll both be wide open. But we do need to provide that as an amenity.
Mr. Chairman, if I can
Yeah, sure.
interrupt for a moment, I apologize, but just to confirm, so you've gone through 4 photographs on the photo board of number 1, that is Exhibit A2, correct?
Correct, yep.
And with respect to all the same, as well as any further ones that you might show us on Exhibit A2, were you the one who took these photographs?
Yes,
Okay, and are they an accurate reflection of what or depiction of what presently exists?
absolutely.
Thank you.
I don't know how to use Photoshop.
What
I don't know how to use Photoshop. I'm barely managing with my stylus here.
the predicate questions for photographs are all required to be asked by the board attorney.
I understand. So photograph number 5 is actually looking at in the foreground, in that little planting area, is the crepe myrtle. That is the crepe myrtle. We'll be moving back. It's actually in a little better shape than the other one, and the other one, we've evaluated the quality. We're not sure if it'll survive or not for quality. So it may be that this one just moves over to the other location, and if the existing landscaping along the foundation perimeter just needs some sprucing up, imagine there'll be a retaining wall that we'll carve in to mitigate that elevation change across this section. That planter will come out, and then this area of the driveway is where we'll have the permeable pavers, and along the right side, when that fills up, it'll just drain through the landscape and out to the street. We can certainly, if we get poor permeability, or if we have any difficulties with that system, once we do a permeability test, that will be redesigned as is common during the grading permit process. I want to be careful to erase any of my scribbles so that I don't have to save them. And then finally, photograph number 6 is really about the back of the handicap spot, or maybe a third of the way into the handicap spot, looking back toward DeForest Avenue. You can see that there's really a fairly ample maneuvering room around the driveway, and we wanted to maintain that. So that represents the site as it exists today. If we go to the site plan, which is part of the application, there's no changes to it. I would go just to the site data box, which is on sheet 3 of 4, and it is dated 8/15/2022, and there's been no changes to that plan. You can see in the site data box that, except for some existing non-conforming conditions as it relates to the location of the house and garage to the property lines, we're fully conforming, except for those existing non-conforming conditions, except for the parking. And that's where we do the parking count. We determined that 7 spaces were required, only 3 are provided on the site, so we need a variance for 4 spaces. And with regard to the, just going to go back to with regard to the variances, the planner's memo also references a variance for parking in the front yard. And while technically it is a paved area, we're not conceiving it nor is it to be used as a parking space. So we are not considering it parking, but it could easily be accommodated. We could argue that under C1 and C2 if the board felt differently. And I think we may need a waiver for the flush curb. I like the way your planner references the 2 criteria for the positive criteria in support of the variances. C1 is referred to as the physical features test. And we often think of C1 variance having to do with a hardship that's created by the shape of a property or a topographic feature or a stream, et cetera. However, in 1985, this part of C1 criteria was expanded to include that the location and configuration of the lawfully existing structure on the property can justify the granting of a variance. In this particular case, the location and configuration of the existing Victorian-era house and garage yield no ability to provide 7 parking
Slow
spaces.
down, please.
7 parking spaces on the site.
No. In this particular location, the location configuration of the existing Victorian-era house
And garage yield no ability to provide 7 parking spaces on the site without removing the wraparound porch and/or paving into the rear yard, and we would still have substandard maneuvering room. With regard to the C2, which your planner refers to as the public benefits test, it's also known as the flexible C variance, where the proposed plan with the deviation represents a better planning alternative than the one that is fully conforming, And to demonstrate that, we need to demonstrate that the purposes of the Land Use Act, appearing at 4055D2, are advanced by the deviation and the benefits outweigh any detriment. And under the purposes of the Act, first and foremost, Section A is the promotion of public safety and general welfare. The general welfare, in that we provide a unique form of educational enhancement for the benefit of the community at large. Also safety, the drop-off space is not a parking space. It provides a safe drop-off space for clients being dropped off and turning around. Section I is to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangements. And I think our good design was actually staying out of our own way and doing as little as possible. Also, J is the promotion to promote the conservation of historic sites and districts, open space, energy resources, and valuable natural resources in the state, and to prevent urban sprawl and degradation of the environment through improper use of land. This preserves the historic home in all of its detail. To attain more on-site parking would require the removal of the porch or significant pavement in the back with no real benefit. It's better for the site and environment to utilize existing public parking lots for employees. Parents would be encouraged to park in the public lots and/or street parking to support local businesses in the B and CRBD zones. As required for both the C1 and C2, we have to demonstrate that we meet the 2-prong criteria. One is that the variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and the second is that there's no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance. There is no detriment to the public good as we see it on this application. We provided a safe drop-off for a low-intensity use. The parking as proposed meets the needs of the applicant's business. Again, some teachers actually are within walking distance, and some may actually take the train. And public parking for both employees and clients are located nearby. There's certainly no degradation to the enjoyment of air, light, and open space as a result of the minimal changes. We see only benefits in bringing the aforementioned educational use to the community with no degradation to the streetscape, and stormwater management will be managed through the use of porous pavers. We think the benefits certainly outweigh any conceivable detriment. And there's no detriment to the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance. Most importantly, this is the exact type of project that the ordinance and master plan seeks to provide in preserving these large historic homes along the periphery of the B and CRBD zones. So we think it meets both the positive and negative criteria. With regard to the memos, I believe many have already been answered by Ms. Yuko. With regard to Krista's memo of October 17th, with regard to, and by the way, we did actually, my landscape architect knows John Linson well. They had a conversation earlier week, and John completely supported the removal of the laurels, and also agreed after a visit that the existing landscape would serve the property well, and it would probably enhance the visibility and the stature of the historic home, because you can see more of the detail. So we did that, and that's why Mr. Linson has no comments. With regard to Ms. Anderson's comments, we will look at the viability of the easterly crepe myrtle. That's the one in the front planter on the right. And we will certainly, our only intent is the possibility of replacing the laurels with nothing that will grow higher than a foot, because we want that visibility. With regard to lighting, there is some lighting around the front door. There is a street light. We anticipate, obviously, cars will pull up, they'll have lights. We didn't want to overlight this, and we did want to take a look. If we think it needs a bollard at the ground level, we would be happy to provide a bollard, but we think that once those skip laurels are gone, the ambient lighting caused by the street lighting combined with the lighting around the door and any lights underneath the porch will provide adequate visibility for in the wintertime. With regard to the Collier's memo,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, before we leave the first one.
Yep.
You mentioned with respect to the lighting, if a bollard's needed, you're happy to do so. Do we would that be engineering or planning, if the board so desired to have a condition of approval that should our board engineer and or our board planner feel that a bollard would be necessary or appropriate, I take it the applicant would stipulate the same?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone want to, one or the other or both?
Yeah. It could be both of us.
It could be, there you go. No, good enough. It might be a lot for one bollard, but that's fine. That's fine. Please continue.
moving on to the Collier's memorandum dated October 19th. I think a lot of it is informational and/or requests I think we've already agreed to do or the attorney has already addressed, going up through the first 7 items on the second page. We provided testimony as to the, I think as to, we'll certainly provide, we'll provide everything. We provided grades on sheet 4 indicating compliance with ADA requirements. I think we provided testimony as to how the garage will work. Informational, moving on to the third page. I think we clarified that it is not 550 square feet, it's actually 502 square feet, and the proposed percentage as shown on the plans is correct. The number 12, we would agree to any of item number 12. What we'd like to do is if the board were to approve this, we'd like to make that part of the grading plan application. Some of this stuff, the soil testing, is stuff that we'd like to do when we're under construction so we don't have to disturb the site prematurely. And obviously we recognize if we have to redesign any aspect of the stormwater management system, we would do that. And there is, by the way, there is a storm sewer, a town storm sewer inlet right in front of the property. So we could either go under or probably around the retaining wall to provide some positive overflow. So if we can't, some positive overflow. And so if in the worst case we, through the township engineer, decide that we need to redesign that, there are ample options for either that don't require any stormwater infiltration. So we've got options. We're trying to be, I think, environmentally correct in allowing for some of that recharge to go down and to go across the landscaping. If the soils won't work with us, we're happy to redesign.
The only thing we'd ask is that you dimension the paver area. We do have the dimensions, but I don't think they're called out on the plan.
Yeah, we would add the dimensions.
Okay. And then you're asking for a waiver for the depressed curb, the ordinance, which I quite honestly have no problem with, but there is that option that in the event that there's an issue with percolation, that you could somehow put in a system that would allow an overflow into the catch basin on the street.
Absolutely.
The only other question I had, which I don't know if you got to it, is just that confirm that there's no change to the curb cut or any of the width as the driveway goes into the right-of-way.
There is no change.
And Mr. Dorr, I guess a question with regard to the existing trench drain and where that goes to.
I don't know if that's even worth, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's working. I mean, I hate
Yeah.
to say we have no information on it, rather than digging up their paved
Sure,
driveway and everything else, it just doesn't make any sense at this point. I assume if there had been a problem, that the owner would be addressing that, because nobody wants to have ice build up in the wintertime in front of the garage.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dower, no objection to condition number 12 with respect to stormwater management being submitted as part of the grading plan application?
Correct.
Bridget, has he gone any slower, or is he just going the same speed?
I'm trying. I apologize. I'm gonna owe some flowers tomorrow, I think.
Okay. All right. Yep,
Or a hand massage, either one.
Yep.
Not by me, of course.
So, Mr. Keller, are you still working? or
I think I
still
can
got-
certainly, I think
I
I've
think you're up
addressed
to
most of Mr.
item
Burgess's.
12.
One speaker, please.
Sorry, I think you're up to item 12. I didn't want to cut you off there. Yep. Item 12 on Colliers, I didn't want to cut you off, so.
Yeah, that's the one I said that we would be happy to agree to that as part of a grading
Okay.
permit,
Yep.
if the board would approve the project. And I think I've touched on pretty much everything in the Burgess memorandum, either through my testimony or through the applicants.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but if I may, Mr. Keller, so I take it then, the applicant is stipulating to the balance of the conditions set forth in the Collier's memo all the way through 24?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to get it explicitly confirmed on the
Yep.
record. Thank
Good.
you.
Okay.
Just as an aside, there is no generator on the site that I know of, and the AC units are actually completely screened with a 4-foot high solid wood fence, and they also screen the refuse cans as well.
All right. If you've wrapped up there, we'll have any questions from members of the board for this witness. Yeah, Rick?
Just one or two clarifications. I understand your description of the lift, the Bilko unit, is well located. It's used infrequently.
Could you speak up,
yeah,
Mr. Bell?
Sorry, the lift makes sense as you've described it. I'm not questioning it, but did you investigate, since the grade change looks to be just over 3 feet back at the back end of the porch, whether a 36-foot ramp could have been squeezed in, separating the private portion of the rear yard from the garage? I mean, it looks like it's just short when you need to put in the landings, but were there any studies that showed how a ramp might have worked? My concern with the Bilko unit is simply that in winter, if there's snow, I mean, not that a ramp is that much better outside, but there will be an ongoing maintenance issue with the mechanical device as compared to a ramp, as you're well aware. It just doesn't fit. You look.
Yeah, we like no maintenance, but
Yeah.
we looked at trying to fit it in the front or along the left side.
Yeah,
Wasn't enough room.
No.
We could have done if we tried to do it out of the back door, out of the kitchen, we would have to rebuild the deck because it's an 8-inch drop down, and I would have had 36 feet of ramp running around the perimeter of the property.
Yeah, no, I was just going it off. It looked like it doesn't quite make it, but I just wanted to make sure you investigated that as an alternative.
Yeah.
Second question, I'm frankly delighted to see the pervious paving, if I didn't mention that adequately before. When I was on the Environmental Commission, we pushed for that on every single project and got it seldom. And scaling it off, the numbers jive with your, data box. It's 477 square feet, it works. My question is, in a positive, softball question, why? For aesthetics, you're not gaining anything on the permeable coverage because our ordinance doesn't give you any benefit from it as it now is constituted. So I'm delighted you're doing it. It's an extra expense. It's potentially a maintenance issue. I have it at my own driveway. It's a wonderful thing, but why here? Is it aesthetic or some principle? I mean, I just want to be convinced that it makes sense to keep asking for it, whether it's the Environmental Commission or somebody else.
Right. I mentioned at the beginning of my credentials that my degree is actually in environmental engineering. And so I'm not a big fan of dry wells because we take water and we put it doesn't get the benefit of going through 5 to 8 to 10 feet of soil and getting clean. We've now put it closer to the groundwater, and unless we're careful, the only clean water is really roof water. So this in our mind was the most environmentally sensitive option, and we'd certainly like to make it work. We can do infiltrators, we can do dry wells with under drains, but we thought this was, yes, slightly more expensive, although dry wells aren't cheap. So we thought it was certainly the more environmentally.
Well, thank you for saying all that, because I just want to get that in the record. It's a softball question, and hopefully at some point, we'll see more of it in some of the meeting.
I thought for a second there you were trying to talk him out of it.
No, it was, reverse psychology. I'm glad you're doing it.
Paul, or any questions?
No.
Danny? No? Any questions? Yeah.
Yes,
Matt.
just so I understand, so the handicap spot is in front of an active garage door.
That is correct.
But the argument you're making is it's very infrequent that any person would need to use it.
It's both infrequent and the dimensions and orientation are such that you could still get one car out of the garage at any given time.
Assuming the homeowners can share peacefully which car to pull out of that garage, but okay. And is the garbage, you place your garbage in the rear and city employees come around the back to collect it? Where in the rear of the property on this picture here is it located? To the right of that vehicle?
To the right of the vehicle,
Just right of the vehicle,
behind
right?
a fence.
Right where I'm circling there's AC units and refuse right in this area.
Okay. And the street light, the only thing that always concerns me is if the street light goes out and you're depending on it for lighting, you could wait a while before that light is replaced.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that may or may not cause issues, so that's definitely something to consider. And then I'm not a construction official, but I would say that a lot of times a board will approve something, and then when the construction plans move forward, there are a lot of burdensome things that now have to go in place the second you start inviting customers into a building. So I would imagine that will be known when you start to go to realize whatever kind of interior renovations you want to make, that there are going to be fire and other related issues that you will have to address that include perhaps sprinkling or other things that the construction official is referring to.
Thank you.
Any other members of the board have questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
Given the age and given the slight change in use, does the Historic Preservation Commission have to weigh in? I didn't see any comments on that.
I don't think so. Given that it's an ORC, as we said earlier, the objective of that is to preserve these older buildings and allow them to become mixed use. I don't know.
The only thing I would say is their staff comments are set out with a certain deadline.
Yeah.
And at some point, the deadline passes, and the board does need to receive the materials in a timely fashion. So we try to acquiesce and be as best as possible to get all comments in, but at some point, the board needs its materials ahead of the hearing. So perhaps I think
The house was constructed in the 1890s, right?
Yes.
That's really the only reason.
Correct.
So in this
Yeah.
case, the deadline, I don't think has been met.
No, it's a good question, though. And I would think that just off the top of my head, that they'd be very much in favor of this, and that's the sort of whole point of the ordinance, really. Any questions from our board professionals? Joe?
Just one. The size of the sign for the two spaces in the front.
I'm sorry, Joe, we can't hear you.
The size of the sign that was spoken about earlier. The size of the sign.
They generally are about 9 inches by a foot. It's a typical parking sign.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record.
I can provide a detail on the drawing.
Okay. And Chris, any
Yeah,
questions?
while we're talking about the parking space, I know we've done this in other locations in the city that we stipulate that there be even though there's a sign to that effect, that there shall be no parking in that parking space.
sorry, in
So
which parking space?
In the parking space in the front yard. Because
In the
that-
turnaround?
In the turnaround, right.
Gotcha.
The turnaround is specifically, as you've stated, for a turnaround, the parking space, that there's a sign there. However, we want to make sure that there's no cars parked there at all. That means weekends and off hours at any time.
I got the step.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions? Any questions from the public with regard to this witness?
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I did have one
Ah,
before we go. The sign, one more, thank you. You referenced the possible need for I guess it would be a design waiver for the depressed curb. From an engineering perspective, Mr. Dower, is that required?
Yes.
Okay. And if it is a waiver, I take it under, I think is it 51 of the MLUL? What I like to refer to as the C1 or undue hardship light. Is that okay, Mr. Burgess? It's colloquial, I know.
51B.
But, what's that?
51B.
51B, right. C1 undue hardship light, because it's not a variance, it's a waiver. But I take it you would make the same argument you made with respect to the C1 undue hardship for the curb, depressed curb, that it's, or you tell me.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I would. Yeah, it's really subsumed into the same C1 and C2 arguments.
So, good enough. Got it. Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes.
just a quick note.
Yes, Sullivan.
Just regarding the parking that you just brought up, this is somebody's home as well, right? And so if someone's entertaining and there is a large crowd, is it not, I can't park there? I'm just, and, you know, I'm just saying it is somebody's home.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know. Just curious more than anything.
Would if I may, Mr. Chairman, that's a good point. During certain hours, it is only a residence, as opposed to both a mixed-use business and residence. I don't know, but what do you do if the sign says "do not park"? You know, or is there a time frame associated therewith so that parking can occur in that turnaround area on weekends or evenings beyond the times testified to by the witness? I offer that to the board and board professionals for consideration in light of an excellent question by our
Actually,
councilman.
it's a very good point, and I would suggest that the regulation is really designed for those times when the business is in operation.
So as to the condition that we discussed a few minutes ago, rather than just making it a blanket ban, say there will be no parking in that space during business hours.
Or do we want specific, yeah, well, you can't get specific hours, the sign will be too big. People are just gonna have to know.
I think that would be sufficient.
Ms. Yuko has been here and has listened to all this. This is a horrible enforcement problem. I don't know what more we could do.
I suspect if Ms. Yuko sees people parking there that she doesn't know, she'll ask them to move.
She
Be
will.
my guess. She doesn't look shy to me.
Yeah.
But she does have a large family.
And I take it weeknights, weekends, people can be permitted to park in that turnaround area,
Yes.
assuming it's the businesses in operations. Okay.
All right. Any other questions for this witness from anyone? All right. Mr. Levy, would you like to wrap up?
I don't want to take any time to wrap up. I think Mr. Keller has presented the grounds for the variance and approval of this application. The board has the power to grant variance relief in this case. There are ample reasons to do so. And we would ask that you approve the site plan and the variance request for parking.
All right, now we've come to the time where there's deliberation among the board members. Any comments from various board members, part of our discussion, our debate with regard to this?
Well, I'll lead off.
Sure. That's
The
right.
first time. I think this is a well-thought-out application. I think it maintains an historic property, which is totally consistent with the intent of that zone, and since we mentioned the master plan, I think they've thought through
Could you
carefully.
speak up, Mr. Brinkhoff?
Sorry.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
I think they've thought through carefully some of the issues, in particular as it relates to access, parking, which I think are directly relevant to the variance being requested, I think we should grant the variance and approve the application.
Thank you, Jay. Any other comments or questions? No. I would like to echo what Jay said. I think this is an absolutely appropriate use for the building. Thank you for taking the time and energy to be here, and we appreciate you making the investment here in Summit, because I know it's time-consuming. These gentlemen are not cheap, and constructing the premises, as Matthew said, will be another expense that you'll have to go through, but we appreciate you doing that. All right, I would like to, someone make a motion to approve the application.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll just, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll assume, unless I'm told otherwise, the motion is a motion to grant minor site plan approval, and the two variances, the parking space number 3 provided, 7 versus 7 required, and the parking in the front yard, as well as a design waiver for the depressed curb, with all the stipulated 2 conditions, including those set forth in the reports that were provided, and all those that were stipulated to on the record this evening. I'll go through them only if you ask me to do so. I'm happy to do so. But I'll also spare you that if you wish me to.
So that was a well-stated motion. Would someone like to echo that motion? Rick? All right, and a second, please?
I'll second that.
All right.
Okay.
And Mr.
We'll take a
Lori?
roll call. Mr.
Yep.
Chairman? if I
Yes.
may. Chairman Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Brinkerhoff?
Yes.
Mr. Delory is a yes. Councilmember O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Bell?
Yes.
Mr. Formicelli?
Yes.
Mr. Stern?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have another case coming up, but let's take a little break here so Bridget can get a little break, and us as well. Let's say around 5 after 9. We'll start again. bring the hearing back together here, and Counselor, you have an announcement you'd
Yes,
like to make?
before we begin with the next application, it's my understanding that one of our board members, Board Member Bell, will be recusing himself from this matter, and will be in the back of the room, if you will, just listening. No objection, Counsel? If he's...
No, my client and I were talking before, he said, hey, I know that guy.
Well, there you go. There you go. Hence, the recusal, thank you.
All right.
We still have six, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
still a quorum, still sufficient to do the public's business, the balance of this evening, so we're good.
All right, so let's go forward with the case on 77 Broad Street.
And I did have an opportunity to review the notice. I did find it to be sufficient in content, timely served, October 7th certified mail, October 12th published, therefore both at least 10 days prior to this evening, the board has jurisdiction, in my opinion, to hear and decide this application this evening as well. And back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
My name is Michael Bonner, attorney for the applicant. I'll give you a brief outline of what we're here to discuss today. And then we have two witnesses. We have the engineer who designed the site plan, and we have a professional planner to go through the variances and the proofs for the variances. I also have the applicant here in the event there are any questions for him, but we don't have any direct testimony planned. It's a fairly simple, straightforward application. It's a minor subdivision. There are several pre-existing variances that we're asking to be continued. With respect to the new lot, there are a couple of variances being created, but they are also largely related to the pre-existing condition of the lot width and the size of the lot. What we have here is an oversized lot in the R6 zone. It is oddly shaped, and it is kind of narrow. We're creating two lots. Proposed lot 801 will retain the existing single-family home where the applicant lives, and he'd like to subdivide off the rear lot and create a buildable lot. No construction is proposed at this time. There would be a separate application. The plans that you received show a dwelling on the lot to be created. That was only shown for informational purposes. I don't believe that was quite explained on the plans, but Ed Deck will explain that when he comes up and does his testimony. Other than that, that's the introduction. I'd like to, would you like to swear both the witnesses?
Well, with the chair's permission, I'll
Sure,
swear
please.
in both witnesses as
Thank you.
well as our board professionals who are
Yeah.
used to me swearing them in. Do all four of you, if you'll all four raise your right hand, we ended up with five, just in case, I guess one is the client. Do all five of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Ed Deck.
Please, board, I'll grab this microphone here, and I'll stand by the display.
And just state and spell your full name for the record.
Sure, Edward, E-D-W-A-R-D, middle initial S, last name Deck, D-E-C.
Okay, and address, business address is fine for the record?
131 North Michigan Avenue, Kenilworth, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Okay. The plans that are in front of the board.
Before you proceed, you'll either be qualified by your counsel or qualify yourself as an expert
Sure,
in the field
absolutely.
of civil engineering, I take it?
Sure. Graduate of New Jersey Institute of Technology. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer and a licensed professional land surveyor and also a certified municipal engineer in the state of New Jersey, and all of my licenses are up to date. I am the principal of Guariello and Deck Associates, a company that started in 1998. I became principal 10 years after that. I've been practicing civil engineering and land surveying for 30 years, and I've appeared in front of this board on several occasions and numerous boards throughout Union County.
And you've been accepted by this board and those boards as an expert in civil engineering as well as in land surveying, at least in some
In
some-
both cases,
some of those
yeah.
boards?
Yes.
Okay. And defer to the chair?
Yep. Any members of the board have any questions of Mr. Deck? No. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, no, I haven't, that's The plans in front of the board is a set of 5 sheets, and it's entitled,
Just to be clear, these are the plans that everyone has, it's not a new exhibit.
that's correct.
And the last revised date?
The last revised date is May 17th, 2022.
Thank you.
Minor subdivision 77 Broad Street, block 3604, lot 8. It's on tax map sheet 36. As you can see on the front cover sheet, we have a general key map plus a 200-foot radius around the proposed property, the proposed subdivision. The middle one is a more defined definition of what the existing lot looks like and its surrounding lots. And the map to the right is the zoning map. We are in the R6 zone, and immediately across the street from us is the R5 zone. We have a zoning chart. We also have general notes, 200-foot radius map owner list, the signature block, and a sheet index. On our general note sheet, we do call out a few of the items, or most of the items that are also in the engineer's review letter, such as making sure that we're not impacting adversely any drainage issues on the adjoining properties, and general information of that sort. The zoning chart, which I'll go into a little bit of further detail on the next few pages, but I'll leave the bulk of the variances to the planner, who will be testifying to those. So I'll bring the board's attention to sheet 2, which is the boundary and topographic map, and it's also a general area map of all of the lots that exist in the triangular section of the Broad Street and Dayton Avenue triangle. The existing conditions, as you can see, has one structure which fronts on Broad Street, and the empty lot that's immediately to the rear of the lot in question. It's a double frontage lot as it exists today, and it's 40 feet wide on Dayton and 84 feet wide on the frontage of Broad Street. Narrows down to a very small distance of approximately 20 some odd feet between that choke point where the lots transfer from Broad Street to Dayton. The existing conditions on this lot show a total area of 10,774 square feet. The coverage is at 34%, building coverage 11.3, and the current FAR is at 16.95. Those numbers, I'm sure you can see why, will change the coverages and building coverages, impervious coverage, and FAR, because we are proposing to subdivide the lot along that intermediate short distance line between the frontage lot and Broad Street and Dayton. The only structure on the rear portion of the lot currently is a shed, and that will be removed when the proposed improvements are done. I'm turning now to sheet 3.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may, before you turn to that sheet, and I apologize, I can't read it on my copy, what is the resultant floor area ratio for the proposed lot that will have the existing dwelling remaining on it?
Right, that would be lot 801. We're calling the northerly portion, we'll be calling that 801, the southerly portion 802. 802 is the portion of the lot where the new development will be. 801 is where nothing is changing, we're just keeping everything the same.
Right, but with that lot 801 being a much smaller lot, I shouldn't say much, a smaller lot
Yes.
than the combined through lot, what is the resultant floor area ratio for proposed lot 801?
Okay. We're allowed 35%, it would be at 32.77%.
Okay, that predicate question for jurisdictional purposes, as the planner and others will know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No problem. So on sheet 3, we're showing a subdivision plan, how the lots will be divided. You can see we're utilizing that the choke point at the existing lot, and that's where the subdivision line will be. The proposed lot 801, which is where the existing structure will remain, is 5,576. Minimum required lot area is 6,000. For lot 802, from that choke point down to Dayton, the area is 5,202 square feet. Again, the minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. Those are the one of the two new variances that we'll be asking for on the two lots. They both will have that same variance, a lot area deficient in the lot area. I will now go to sheet 4, which shows the proposed improvements. It's also titled incorrectly, as pointed out in the engineer's report. That should be, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's also entitled incorrectly. The title of this sheet should read the proposed site plan. However, it's saying it's the boundary and topographic plan. That will be changed. On the sheet, what we're showing is how we will construct the improvements on the new lot 802. 801 will remain the same. 802 is where all the new improvements will be, and the shed will be removed. Just real quickly, I would go over the other existing non-conforming variances that are on 801, and that would be the front setback required is 25. The existing structure is at 24.73. That'll remain the same. Very de minimis variance, but still variance nonetheless. Side setback, one side is 9.73, which would be the driveway side, and the rear corner of the building on the easterly side of the lot is at 5.96. That will not change. Those are two existing nonconformities that we're asking variances for, so those won't change. Again, as we discussed earlier, the impervious coverage changes, the building cover percentage changes, and the FAR, because the lot is reduced. So now we have these variances that are being generated by the reduction in the lot size. The lot 802, which is a 40-foot wide lot by approximately, if you take the average of the side, two sides, about 125 feet deep, an area of 5,202 square feet. What's shown here is a structure or a dwelling, pretty much for informational purposes. We're showing that a very good size type structure, which fits the neighborhood as far as the type of building and size of building that's there now, will fit onto this lot. We're not asking for any variances for this lot other than the bulk with variance and the bulk area variance. We're not asking for any coverages for the house, no coverages for the total impervious, no side yard or front yard or rear yard setbacks. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before you leave that, I guess two things. One, what would the maximum width of the conceptual dwelling on lot 802 be if it were to be conforming with the side yard setback requirements on proposed lot 802?
right, we have a 40-foot wide lot, 8 feet on each side, 16, so we're left with 24 feet, and that would be the width of the house.
24-foot width, I'm no expert. That's sufficient for and reasonable for a modern day dwelling?
Yes, most townhouses are even narrower than that, but
How
this
about
would be.
single-family dwellings?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, it's not a huge house, but it fits the neighborhood.
And my other question is, I believe our planner had a, and I apologize, Mr. Burgess, if it wasn't you, but I thought my notes indicated a building coverage variance for proposed lot 802. I got it from somewhere.
Right.
But you're saying that there is no
We are not asking for any.
coverage
No,
variance.
they're permitted to go 20%,
Right.
and on 8.02, they're at 19.3%. If you look on page 4 of my memo.
On
We
the-
are slightly below the allowable.
Maybe I got it from, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I got it from our zoning officer's memo.
Well, I think what, and she correctly did take into account, because I'm still showing a shed on there,
Ah,
and I believe there might have been like a stoop or an overhang that was also included.
okay.
That
so-
23, that 3.04 equates to about 157 square feet. So you subtract the shed and those stoop areas, which will have to be counted in the final design, but we are not asking for any variance for the total building coverage.
So what is existing on the dwelling, on proposed lot 801, what is existing and will remain, is compliant with the maximum 20% of building coverage requirement, correct?
The remaining building coverage is, exceeds the allowable by 1.84%. 801.
Actually, there's a broader issue here, because the indication from the attorney was that they are not proposing any development at this point, although the map had identified something. And then we need clarification on this.
Yeah, because, and I'm talking about 801, the one where the
Oh,
building's
801.
staying, yeah.
Yeah, 801, you are correct. I'm sorry, I thought you said 802.
Oh, no.
801, it does exceed. As I said, you're permitted 20%, but on 801, they're at 21.84% as proposed with the proposed subdivision.
When it's
Right,
subdivided, it
right.
becomes,
Non-conforming.
a variance is required.
Right.
Correct.
It's one of the variances that we indicated we're creating
And
on
it's 21.84,
Sorry, I need one speaker.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
21.84%.
is the agreed upon
Calculation.
proposed building coverage. Thank you. I'll take the blame for interrupting, the interruption. The 21.84%, okay. And however, for proposed lot 802, there is no specific dwelling being proposed, so there is no building coverage deviation being requested, correct?
Exactly, and we will. we will
Correct.
stay with
What-
Okay. Mr. Watt?
It was shown for informational purposes to show that a conforming dwelling could be constructed without violating setbacks, coverage, total coverage, building coverage, impervious, and all the setbacks.
I understand, hence
That's-
my earlier question with respect to the
Right.
dwelling width for the board to consider.
Yeah.
The only variances you're asking for proposed lot 802 are the lot-related variances, lot area and lot width, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
If I could add one other point, for proposed lot 8.01, in addition to building coverage, maximum lot coverage also exceeds what's permitted by code. The code permits 40%, and they're at 65.72%.
Again, do you agree with those numbers, 65.72% for total impervious coverage?
That's correct, I do.
Yes.
75.
Again, once the subdivision, were the subdivision to be granted, that would create the issue.
That is
The
correct.
variance is needed
Right.
on the existing dwelling.
Right.
Correct.
And I wanted to make sure there was an agreement, if there could be an agreement, as to the magnitude of the deviations, because of course, that's what the board is considering.
And so if there was a subdivision and they were to come back for a structure on that subdivision, it would be compliant with the codes, subject to the width of the lot.
Correct, on the new lot.
On the new lot.
The,
structure would be
the
compliant.
coverage variances apply to the segregated portion that will contain the existing dwelling.
And while we are discussing a proposed building that we're not proposing, that would also include a garage, because in a sense, that would also be required in a new home, which obviously is.
Right. Well, without proposing a home, it would be compliant with a garage.
We are showing the driveway and garage, we consider more or less a typical structure that meets meets the code requirements for FAR, building coverage and so on.
And I'm sorry, did you say you are showing a garage?
Yes,
Okay, and it's, how many car garage?
that would be one car garage?
One car garage?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you point it? Can you point to it? Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to interrupt, Mr. Chairman.
This is,
And then we would have one car.
just need to get it all squared away. Okay, fine, sorry to interrupt.
Okay. So, again, I think we've identified the variances, but again, I would let the planner go into those in greater detail. There are comments in the Colliers report, which I'll be glad to bring up now. I'm starting from page 1, informational type of comment for 1.
Which
describing-
report?
Sorry? The Colliers report?
Colliers Engineering.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
October 18th, 2022. Items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 does identify, the two-lot areas, but 1 through 5 are more or less information describing the lot itself. 5, it does highlight the square footages of the new lots, which are both below 6,000 square feet, not by much, but still below it.
Would you concur that the information set forth in 1 through 5 is accurate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Also, number 6 is accurate. Again, as I said, is really pointing out the square footages of both of the new lots. Item number 7 is a continuation, more or less, like 6, where we're identifying all of the improvements to determine what the total lot coverage would be. The limited disturbance on number 8 will be shown on the soil erosion sediment control plan. It's not shown presently, which would cover the perimeter of new lot 801. There's no limit of disturbance within perimeter of 802. There's no limit of disturbance or disturbance of any kind on 801. Steep slopes, there are no steep slopes. There is transition area along this narrow corner on 802, but that was more of a step down from the sidewalk to the existing grade. Architectural plans, as stated in number 10, were not provided or submitted. Again, the plan shows a house on it, and that house really is to identify that we can construct something that's suited to the neighborhood and will work as a two-family structure.
I don't think you mean two-family.
I'm sorry, two-story. Yeah, well, my mistake. I'm glad you caught that. 11 is informational. 12 does discuss the increases in percent as far as the square footage of improvement, lot coverage, and that is correct, 35.49 for 802 and 64.72 for 801. Now, I believe this item here, number 13, is one that requires me to respond to that in a little bit more detail. That is the stormwater calculations and design. In our case, we do show a number of improvements directed towards grading, directed towards drainage. This will be, these comments, will be addressed at the grading plan stage when submitted to the township for their review. But I'll quickly go through sections A through E. We did provide a calculation based on increase in the impervious coverage. We came up with a size of the recharge pit and the volume. There was a note in there as how the pipes cannot be included in volume, which is correct, and we will make sure that whatever volume was needed for our design, we will not include that as part of the storage. We show 3-inch roof drains, and we do have a detail on sheet 5 that shows a downspout with a leader pipe. The downspout has a splash pad, and that would be if in the event for some reason that this pipe is blocked or the recharge area is full, it doesn't block the roof leaders or gutters from overflowing. There's like what you would call a emergency type of outlet where if the pipe was full, it would go onto the splash pad, and all the splash pads will be directed away from the adjoining properties, either towards the back or towards the front of the house. We show piping along both sides of the house. One side we show one side directly out to the street, the other into the recharge system, and then from there, an overflow out to the street. The comment said that they would like to see that eliminated, which is not a problem. What we would do is connect both sides into the recharge system and then have a yard drain which will act as an overflow. And then would come out and through the lawn, then go out to the street.
So, in your professional opinion, the stormwater mitigation that you've designed or that can be accommodated in agreement with the township engineer is sufficient to handle the runoff from the increase in impervious coverage on 801?
Right, we think it is. Again, the final design was based on the total amount of improvements. We designed it based on a 25% coverage percentage, and then we took a 0.4% void ratio for the storage, for the sizing of the system, and then we added an additional 100 cubic feet for the sump pump, which will be connected into that same system. So it's sized not only for the runoff, but also for the sump pump.
And it's sized and designed to accommodate if and when a home is built on the...
That's correct. And that would be designed according to the final impervious coverages.
Mr. Dorr, could you comment on this? This is a little confusing. It may be confusing to the board as well when I look at the 3-inch PVCs and flowing into the street and other kinds of things. Maybe you could qualify that, help us out a little bit.
Well, quite honestly, I don't have any issues with what Mr. Deck is proposing.
Okay.
The city will review all the application for whatever is proposed for the new lot as a grading permit. And in that, when they do that review, they also review for stormwater. I don't know if the city would approve sump pumps. We generally don't recommend sump pumps going into that, but that would be up to the city to make that determination. And if they allow any overflows into the street, again, we normally don't recommend that, but Mr. Deck had given the option of doing a bubbler or whatever on a lawn, so that would be an option. So all the stormwater improvements which are proposed for the home that's not being constructed, not being proposed, will be reviewed internally in the city under the grading review.
Seems like a lot of detail for a home that's not being constructed. Anyway, okay.
If I could ask a quick
Sure,
follow-up,
yes.
Mr. Chairman, on that for Mr. Dower, or for the engineer, for the applicant. You mentioned it was based on 25% coverage? Did I hear you correctly?
There's the way that the calculation for the runoff, we use 25% of the total difference between the pre and the post. Multiply that times 25%, and that would be the volume that's required.
Is that then assuming that the proposed lot 801 will have the improvements that are remaining, are proposed to remain, and lot 802 will have the maximum permitted building and impervious coverage on it?
Well, it'll probably be near the maximum allowable, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, so it would then cover, stormwater management presumably would cover what could be constructed on proposed lot 802 as of right, if this board were to grant the subdivision and variance relief requested this evening. Would
That's
that be
correct.
accurate? Okay, thank you. I want to make sure it was it covered the max.
Okay.
Anything more would need to be approved by the board.
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Deck, continue on.
Go to number 14, which is the landscaping plan. Again, we did take note of the recommendations by both the engineer and the planner in the town about native tree use. There is a link that was given to us, which we will be using for that purpose. We do show on this plan 2 AC units on the westerly side of the building. Those will be screened as required by the zoning ordinance. And there are no trees that are going to be removed on 802. That was number 14 and 15. Number 16 is a list of items that we have to abide by during our construction and also, on our final plans. So none of those, or all of those, we agree to, none of them we object to.
Would it be fair to say that 16 through 22 would be acceptable to the applicant as conditions of approval?
Absolutely, yes.
You
I
don't
don't have
have
to
to
go
read
through
each
each
one.
one, but yeah.
All right, great, okay. Good.
No, that sums it up. If you have any questions.
The board have any questions of Mr. Deck? Given his presentation, his testimony? Questions? The board professionals have any questions of Mr. Deck? Chris or Joe, and then Mr. Warner, any questions of Mr. Deck?
Well, we might know the answer, Mr. Chairman, but with your permission, I just want to make sure all the other professionals are covered. I don't know that they're all going to be covered by the planner. So all the other reports, for example, our zoning officer did have some items, skipping through the informational items to expedite the process. Page 2, existing or proposed mechanical equipment. She identified what could be a potential variance, so I want to just have that addressed. Any existing mechanical equipment in the rear yard would meet the required rear yard setback of 25 feet, but may or may not meet the required side yard setback of 5 feet. Did you see that? Can you
Yeah,
address
well,
that?
we have 8 feet, and we'll be able to put, if there's an AC unit within that 3-foot area between the house and the setback, so we don't have a problem with that. Or they'll be placed in the rear, and we'll have more than 25 foot.
So you can accommodate that mechanical equipment without violating the setback requirements?
That is correct, side and rear.
Okay. And the existing shed, I guess you already said it's going to be removed, correct?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And that's all. Everything else of hers was informational, and I think all the others were essentially no objection, no comment, but for our planner, who no doubt, your planner will address his comments.
Okay.
So I have nothing further, thank you.
Are there any members of the audience here tonight that would like to have a question of Mr. Deck? Please come forward, man. And one thing that we would advise you, we'll ask for your name and address, but one thing we would advise you is that right now, these are questions relative to the testimony of this witness. And when the planner comes on, you can ask questions of the planner, and when all that's done, you can come back and give us your thoughts and ideas and opinions on the case as well.
Okay,
Okay? Yeah,
okay.
thanks. And then Mr. Warner will,
Okay, my name is
Swear you
Patricia
in.
McFall. I am the owner of the property right next to this subdivision.
Okay. And I'm sorry, madam, your last name is?
McFall, MC, capital Evans and Frank, ALL.
so, Ms. McFall, when you say next to, if I'm facing the yard with the vacant yard, are you to the right of the yard or to the
I'm
left?
to the left.
To the left. So
Yes. I'm 18 Dayton Road.
Okay, so,
18 Dayton. Would you happen to know your lot number by any chance?
No, I didn't bring my tax bill.
Okay.
I think that'll be lot 14.
lot 14, yeah. I
Lot
think
14?
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, little history.
Yeah.
Well, before you do that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, as you heard the chairman state, these are questions for the engineer. If
Okay.
you have questions for him.
Questions
the-
for you.
the
Yeah.
testimony will be later.
Okay. You propose on lot 8.1, you propose, the coverage is already there, and you're exceeding the coverage. The maximum is supposed to be 40%. The house that's existing, if this subdivision takes place, it will be 65.72, correct?
The house plus the driveway plus the
Yeah,
sidewalk.
so you're already over the maximum.
Before, well, we're already over once we do the subdivision.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct.
Now, the next thing I am asking, we're talking about drainage. We talked about the house that's not been discussed yet, so we won't talk about that. We are on the side of a mountain, correct?
Well, I wouldn't call it a mountain, but there
But
is
the
a slope.
street, a very big street from the top, the street above, down to that property is quite a large hill.
Yes.
The drainage at this point is a problem now, a big problem, because it goes right into the house I own. And you're saying the AC units, you're going to put them on the side of a 40-foot lot. Or you could put them in the back, you're telling me.
We have more than adequate space to put it in.
In the back, not the side.
We could do that if the board wishes to make that recommendation.
Okay, now the next thing, we're talking about the non-existent house. What is the amount of square footage that could be put on that lot?
The total amount is 20%, which is, I believe, 1,049. We're proposing 1,004. We're allowed to go all the way up to that 1,000. I believe it's 49.
Okay,
You're talking about the footprint.
Footprint of
the
building.
footprint
Yeah.
of the new proposed, okay.
So, for representational purposes, what you see here, if we do decide to go more or what's allowed, you wouldn't be almost able to tell the difference. It's that close.
Okay, I'm on a 40 by 100 lot now. I cannot put a garage on that lot.
We're putting it like as a front entry type of structure. It wouldn't be along the side of the building. It would be a front entry garage. Right, it would be in front of the building. We'll have the garage doors.
Okay, so that, if you put a garage there, that means you're going to have to go 2 stories.
It's a proposed 2-story building, and we're allowed to go 2 stories.
That's not existing, okay. I have no questions at this point.
Could you tell us a little bit about your drainage problem there? We have some people from the city here. that
Okay,
is on our,
we do have a
well,
huge
May I
drainage
swear
problem.
in?
Oh, yeah, I
Don't
thought you
swear
did. I'm
me in.
sorry, yeah,
No, I
right,
did not
yeah,
yet, but no objection, applicant's counsel?
Yeah.
Let the record reflect no objection from applicant's counsel. Please
Okay.
raise your right hand. Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, excuse me?
I do, I
Thank
do.
you.
Having had this property since 1960, that's when that was built, and that's when my parents owned it. We have had drainage problems consistently because it is off the side of a mountain, and the slope going up to Huntley Road is a very big hill. And when the water comes down, it comes down like a river. And we've had constant problems because of that water and that drainage.
So it comes down Huntley Road in front of your home?
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't know if Mr. Dorr or Matthew are aware of this or not, but it's just something we might want to file away for future, tell Mr. Aaron Schrager about it.
Okay.
I just wanted to understand what the situation was there, and so it's very helpful for you to tell us that.
Okay.
Yep.
The house that I own does have a sump pump,
Mhm.
and it drains through a pipe into the street. And basically, that sump pump goes all the time because of the fact that we are on this huge hill.
Okay, all right, well, thank you for letting us know.
Yep, so I can't say anything else about lots 8-1 or 8-2 at this point, just address what he's saying.
Well, it's up to the chair, because you have now been sworn in, so you have
We're gonna have
theoretically more leeway.
We'll have another witness come up who's a planner, talk a little bit about other aspects of this case. And then if this is more of an opinion or a pro or con, you could wait to that, but if it's more questions related to what he said, you can ask more questions.
Okay, because with the history, I can tell you exactly what happened in 1960 regarding subdivisions on this lot.
Okay, all right, well,
Can I just want to add some information? That flow that would be going from east to the west, which is now going on to your property, would be intercepted by this proposed structure. So good amount of that overland flow will be intercepted by the structure and then redirected towards Dayton. So a lot of that water will no longer be going onto your property.
The next thing, the lot is not somewhat flat. It also has a slope. If you're standing on the right-hand side up, there's a two-story building there. There's a huge slope there, and that is another problem. So how are you going to rectify that with retaining walls or whatever?
I'm not sure where that slope occurs. I know we have a transition in grade from elevation 102 to elevation 98. So that's 4 feet of change in grade along from east to west on the property. So that would be intercepted by a portion of the building and then redirected to the recharge system and then overland flow onto Dayton. This area will also go out to Dayton. So we have a good amount, and that would include the driveway intercepting the overland flow. So a good amount of that overland flow, almost all of what comes off of lot 13 will be intercepted by the improvements and directed towards Dayton. Will not be going into the property.
Well, I can tell you now that the driveway on my property has been replaced at least 5 times because the water continually rushes down, gets underneath that driveway, and it has been a major problem since 1960.
all right, well, it's good for us to know, and I heard what the engineer is saying, that this structure, if it's built, will help intercept some of that water.
Maybe.
I hope so, yeah.
Okay.
So after the planner speaks, you can come back and ask questions of him, and then we can get your thoughts and
Okay,
ideas
thank
at the
you.
very end. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience here like to comment or ask questions of this witness, Mr. Deck? All right. Mr. Bonner?
I'm
Next
sorry,
witness?
is there, oh, I didn't know if this was a member of the public. Okay, was asking a question, my apologies. No, okay.
He's the assistant.
He's
Got
with
it.
me.
Got it.
I'm good.
Okay.
If it's okay with the board, he's going to send, because he's here, he has some mobility issues.
Okay.
Michael, if you don't mind, I do have some photographs that I'd like to be sorted through.
These need to be marked.
Yes.
As exhibits.
Are these the same as this?
No.
You're gonna have to.
Mr. Chairman, I have some photographs to
Okay.
submit.
All right.
Why don't,
I'm already sworn in, if I may.
you are, just if we could get your name and business address for the record.
Of course. My name is Anthony Marucci, spelled M-A-R-U-C-C-I. I use Post Office Box 509, Cedar Knolls, New Jersey, as my mailing address. If you would like to hear my qualifications, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, 1973, from Newark College of Engineering, which obviously is known as New Jersey Institute of Technology today. I received my professional engineer's license in 1978, my professional planner's license in 1979, and my land surveyor's license in 1981. From 1973 to 2001, 28 years, I served in municipal government in the engineering field, beginning as the assistant engineer for the city of Orange for 11 years, 2 years as assistant engineer for the village of South Orange, 2 years as the city engineer for the city of Orange, and the final 13 years as township engineer for the township of Bloomfield. After 28 years in the public sector, I decided to form my own company, Marucci Engineering Associates, in 2001. We are now in our 22nd year. I am a principal with the company, and with this firm, I serve both the public clients and private clients. My public clients, I serve as planning board and zoning board engineer for the Township of Bloomfield consistently up to present day. I'm also the zoning officer for the Township of Bloomfield. I served as planning board and zoning board engineer for the Borough of Caldwell from 2004 to 2014. I've also served other municipalities in different capacities. I can go on, but that's basically my background.
Okay, great. Any members of the board have any questions of Mr. Marucci?
If you wouldn't mind, I know I'm here in the capacity of a planner, but if you would qualify me as an engineer also, because sometimes I kind of go back and forth, even though I'm not the engineer on the project, just as sometimes I kind of go back and forth.
Your license remains in good standing as both a professional planner and a civil engineer in the state of New Jersey,
All my licenses are current.
including those two?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I'll defer to the
All
chair.
right, any questions regarding Mr. Marucci's qualifications? All right, please proceed. Thank
I
you.
think you've been accepted as both.
And Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I also supplied some photographs that were actually taken, they're Google Maps. If I can just describe them, the first one,
Yeah, I'm gonna
Sure.
jump in, thank you, man. I'm good at interrupting. We'll call this, it's 1, 2, 3 pages of photographs. We could make
Yes.
it one compendium, we can call it Exhibit A1. Who took, well, the Google,
they're actually
the
from
first two
Google.
are
I took them, but they're from Google.
Got it. Why don't you, Exhibit A1 is fine for this 3-page compendium, why don't you proceed?
And I also would like, if the board would allow me, the map that I have on exhibit is the map prepared by the engineer, which is the sheet showing the existing condition of the site. But I've highlighted it and I've marked it up, and I've also taken some photographs of the area, all mounted on the sheet. And if I could have that introduced as evidence also.
Sure, if that would be Exhibit A2 and as described. I guess it's in essence planner's exhibit?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, the shorthand will be planner's exhibit.
It's actually 2 sheets.
2 sheets?
I'll explain it.
Okay.
First of all, the photographs that I submitted, the first photograph is the subject property on Broad Street. It's the existing dwelling owned by the applicant.
And just to be clear, we're on Exhibit A1 now.
On
correct?
A1. The second photograph is from the rear on Dayton Road, which is the rear of the property, and as you can see, it shows a vacant lot, fenced in, and it also shows the neighbor's house to the west of us, which is the neighbor that just spoke before. The third is actually an aerial view of the subject property and all the surrounding area. The exhibit on the easel, again, is the plan that was prepared by the engineer, and the purpose of it is to show the subject property within the block, and the fact that the block itself is unique. The block is surrounded by Broad Street to the north, Huntley Road to the east, Dayton Road to the south, and it's an irregular block. It's a triangular shaped block that has its apex in the westerly point. The subject property itself is unique in its size and its shape. It fronts on Broad Street. It has 84.2 feet lot width on Broad Street, but then it funnels down to a pinch point in the middle towards the center of only 21 feet. And then it widens out again, and it fronts on Dayton Road at 40 foot wide. So, and in terms of size, as the engineer explained, it's 10,774 square feet, which is 180% of what the lot area requirement is for the R6 zone. Also, I'll start at the apex on the westerly side. The first property is owned by the town, which is all vacant and nicely landscaped, and I would hope that it would remain that way. That's lot 1. Lot number 2 is a developed property fronting on Broad Street with the rear facing Dayton Road. And I show that in the photograph where the driveway comes in from Dayton Road. It is also undersized in area. It has an area of 4,560 square feet. It has a lot width on Broad Street of 50 and on Dayton Road of 50.73 feet. The next lot going towards the east is lot number 3. Again, the same. It has a house facing Broad Street, and the garage is on lot 3. You can see the garages are accessed from Dayton Road. It has a 50-foot lot width on Broad Street, a 40-foot lot width on Dayton Road, and the area is 5,585 square feet, also within the range of what we're proposing. The next 3 lots have lot areas that are in excess of the R6 zone, but again, their frontages on Broad Street are 50 feet. Their frontages on Dayton Road are 40 feet. As you get next adjacent to the subject property, lot number 7 has a lot area of 5,000 square feet. Its only access is from Broad Street and has a lot width of 50 feet. The lot adjacent to our vacant portion, which is lot 14 or number 18 Dayton Road, has a lot area of 4,864 square feet and a lot width of 40 feet. What I'm trying to explain or show is that what we're proposing is in character of the area, both in lot width and in some cases lot area. 4 of the lots have lot areas less than what we're proposing. In addition to the lots I just mentioned, there are several other lots within the RC. Sure.
Can you tell us the lot sizes of the other lots in the triangular block?
They're in excess of the 6,000 square foot required, but they're less than our lot. In other words, I think I have them here. I believe I do. Just give me a second. Lot 7, like I said, is 5,000 square feet. Lot 6 is 8,450. Lot 5 is 7,450. I don't have lot 4, but it's actually less than that. But again, they're larger in area, but they do not meet the lot widths. In addition to the lots I just described, just in general within the R6 zone, there are 4 lots on Milton Avenue that are 55 foot wide. Just give me a second, I have them here.
This will be A3?
No, this is page 2
Oh,
of
it's page
A2.
2 of A2.
On Milton Avenue, street address number 5, 7, 9, and 11 are 4 developed properties with single-family homes that have lot widths of 55 feet and lot depths of 100 feet with lot areas of 5,500 square feet. On Huntley Road, we have number 6, number 8, and number 10 that have lot widths of 50 feet. So what we're proposing, in my opinion, is in character with the area. And I believe that and let me get into the variances. They were, Mr. Deck explained them, but I'll get into them a little further. I'm going to speak about lot 8.02 first, because that's the lot that we're creating. The only variances that we're requesting is the lot width of 40 feet, where 60 is required, and a lot area of 5202, where 6,000 square feet is required. No other variances are being proposed. That means that the setbacks will be complied with, the building coverage will be complied with, the lot coverage, and also the FAR. Lot 8.01, the developed property, will have a lot area of 5,572 square feet, where 6,000 is required, and a maximum pervious coverage of 65.72%, where 40% is required, a maximum building cover of 21.84%, where 20% is required, a minimum front yard of 24.73 feet, where 25 feet is required, which is an existing condition that would not change whether this application was before the board or not. The minimum side yard of 5.96 feet, where 8 feet is required, and again, that's an existing condition that will not change. And the minimum combined side yards of 15.69 feet, where 16 feet is required, and again, that's an existing condition that will not change. I believe the rationale for the subdivision is based on the C2 criteria, where the benefits outweigh any detriments. In my opinion, this is a specific piece of property, both in size and in shape. And it's also a through lot, where it has more than one access to streets. 4 of the lots, as I stated before, have areas less than the required area for the R6 zone. 7 of the lots have frontages less than required. In my opinion, I believe it is definitely in character with the neighborhood scheme. And I also reviewed the master plan reexamination report, where it states as goal number 4, increased housing options. It recommends increased housing options for young adults, empty nesters, and seniors. The proposed development of the single family home that would be constructed here by size would be controlled by the setbacks, by building coverage, and FAR, so it would be a modest home in that respect, and I believe that complies with the goal of the master plan. I believe that several purposes of the municipal land use law are advanced. Purpose A, to promote the general welfare. Again, that's in compliance with the goal of the master plan. I believe Purpose B, to secure safety from fire, flood, panic, and other natural resources, not natural man-made disasters. The new construction would meet the building codes. There would also be a stormwater management plan created. When I'm finished, I'd like to speak about the comment that the neighbor had with regarding to the stormwater. Purpose C, we're not requesting variances, as I said, for setbacks, so I believe we're providing adequate light and air and open space. Purpose E, it promotes the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, and regions, and preservation of the environment, which again is in compliance with the goal in the master plan. And purpose I, obviously, the new dwelling will promote a desirable visual environment. With respect to the negative criteria, in my opinion, I don't see any substantial impairment of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. It's a permitted use. It's in character with the established scheme of the neighborhood with respect to lot size and lot width. I believe there's no substantial detriment to the public good. Again, it's a permitted use. It's particularly suited for the neighborhood, and it's in character with the neighborhood. I wanted to just make a comment about with respect to the neighbor's comment about drainage. As you can see on the plan, the slope by the contours, the slope of the property in the existing condition slopes from east to west. And basically, drainage flows right onto the neighbor's property. Once you place a house there, you're technically blocking that water, and you're going to control it with the stormwater management plan. So, in my opinion, it'll substantially reduce any water going onto the neighbor's property.
And for clarification, you're providing that testimony in your capacity as an engineer, correct?
Yes, sir. And that's all I have.
Any members of the board have questions of Mr. Luigi?
Well, just to that point about the water, it's your opinion, how do we know you're going to be right on that?
Well, again, you have an existing condition, you have a vacant lot, and it slopes from east to west, completely.
Yeah.
Once you place a house there, you're technically blocking that water, but not only just blocking it, but you have to regrade the subject property so that you have to swale it on the side yards on both sides towards the street. I mean, that's all part of the grading plan that would be proposed by the applicant's engineer.
Okay.
I was gonna say, it's still a higher level property elevation-wise than the property next to it. The water tends to find its own level despite some of our best efforts.
Right, but you have to regrade it in order to put the house there. When you put the house there, the water's not going in that direction anymore.
You're gonna grade in the opposite direction or flat, I guess?
You're gonna flatten it out where the house is, and again, you're gonna swale on the side yards so that the water goes out towards the street.
Do you have any history or context for how the mega block was divided back when it was done?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any context or history for when the overall block was divided up into multiple lots back in presumably the 1940s or 50s?
No, I don't.
I'm curious, 'cause if
In all fairness, I was only asked to be involved in the project within the last week or 10 days, and I did as much research as I could, including the master plan.
It's eclectic enough with some of the lots that it would be interesting to hear some context for how it was conceived back when it was done, particularly the lot in question, but also the lot all the far end, and what the history of that number one lot was, if it was part of something else or if it was later subdivided.
Well, I think the reason why they were carved out this way is because it's a triangular block. If this was a rectangular block, I don't think you would have had those through lots. That's just my opinion.
Understandably, and there could be some different ways to have divided those blocks, so I'm wondering if there's anything to inform that.
I don't have any information on that.
Any other members of the board have questions?
Yes. Yes, what is the frontage distance on 18 Dayton, this woman's property to the left?
The lot width,
Frontage on Dayton, the width of the lot, yes.
40 feet,
Okay,
same as what's being proposed.
okay. And that's all right. Do we know when that was subdivided? That looks like that was a subdivision itself. Are you aware of that history?
The neighbor, I believe, said was
I think she has
1960.
a history that she's going to share, but I thought I'd ask
I
you
believe
if
she
you-
said it was 1960. When I looked it up, it was 1960 that the house was built on that property.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? How about our board professionals? Any questions for Mr. Luigi?
Yes, hi. A couple questions. The ordinance, when it talks about the R6 zone, it talks about when we're dealing with new housing construction, that we should be analyzing how that new house would fit in with the neighborhood in terms not only of lot size and dimension, but scale, design features, and orientation of the building itself. Could you talk a little bit about how the proposed subdivision and the associated house that will someday be on this property will fit in with the established neighborhood? Maybe you could talk a little bit about the building heights and FAR of some of these other houses, to give the board a better sense of how any house on this site will fit in with the neighborhood.
Well, when we talk about the neighborhood, the properties to the east of us face Company Road, so they are not really part of this neighborhood. The neighborhood really, in my opinion, starts with the subject property towards the west.
Yeah, can I just cut it? Because in some respects I would tend to agree, because the houses are oriented to Huntley, but all of those houses are, at least three of them, abut the subject site. So I think we should also talk about that as well.
But they're on larger lots. The lot that's closest to us, the neighbor's lot on lot 18, again, you saw the photograph. The house that's built on that lot is substantially going to be the same as what would be proposed here. Again, we're not asking for variances for the building coverage and especially the FAR. And that's determined by the size of the lot. The lot next door is actually substantially smaller than ours. Ours is going to be larger. That's really the character of the area.
So you're saying that that one lot defines the character of the neighborhood?
I didn't say it defines the character. I said we're in character with the neighborhood in that sense. We're on a lot that fronts on two streets. Now, I don't know in the future if any of these other lots can be divided also, because their lot areas are smaller and the board takes each case on its own merit. But in our case, our lot has an area larger than the lot next door, and also the lot next door to the existing house.
Consistent with this discussion, this lot, as it stands now, is the largest lot. Putting aside for a moment the lots that front on Huntley, it is the largest lot of all the lots from the subject site going to the left.
Not to interrupt
correct?
you, but also it's larger than the two lots on Broad Street to the east of us also. This lot 9 is 8,800 square feet. We're over 10,000.
10,000. Have you done any calculation? Right now, the existing dwelling on the proposed new lot that it would be located on would have a 65% impervious coverage. In terms of complying to the impervious coverage, what would you have to do to move that proposed subdivision line in order to get that one to comply?
To get it down to 40%, you're talking about 25%. I think you would make, I think you would make this lot unbuildable at that point. I don't think you can add it. I don't think you can take off 25% off of the 8.02 to make it a buildable lot at that
Because it
point.
would come to about 9,000 square feet, right?
For the existing,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I just wanted the board to understand the balance here. And I'm not saying this one way or the other in terms of a final determination, but I think you really need to have all the information in front of you. It was interesting, I found that you pointed to the lots on Milton.
Milton would be down here.
Yeah, but you didn't want to talk about these three.
Well, again, they conform. They do conform.
But what size?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your response.
I said the lots to the east conform. They conform to the area.
And, okay.
And-
I
and
thought
the
the
lot
question
width.
was, why didn't you point to them? And the answer was they conform?
Well, I said they conform, so
I'm just trying to give the board a better picture of the neighborhood.
of course.
You know the lot sizes of these three lots?
Yeah. The corner lot is 80 by 128, so it's
About 8,400 square feet.
about 8,400, 8,500.
The next one's about 8,500.
About the same. The lot 11 might be a little less because of the shape, but they're all in excess of the 6,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Gore, any questions?
No questions.
If I may,
Mr. Miller, please.
Thank you. I heard your testimony, you said you were arguing from a planning perspective, the C2 flexible C variance for these particular variances, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and am I correct in understanding that you are not advancing an argument at all under the C1 undue hardship?
Well, I
criteria?
don't see it as a hardship case.
Right, would part of the reason for that be that the hardship would be self-created if in fact it were a hardship because you would be subdividing the lot?
It's not a hardship.
Right, okay. So with respect to the C2, how do you define the applicable neighborhood for purposes of analyzing the requisite variance relief? What's the neighborhood from your perspective?
The neighborhood is the block, but I look at it, again, from our property towards the west, because the properties to the east front on Huntley Road, where ours front on both Broad Street and Dayton Road, so that's the neighborhood.
So you define the applicable neighborhood for professional planning analysis purposes as being the entire triangular block except for the lots that front on Huntley, as well as the one additional lot that fronts on Broad Street immediately adjacent to that corner lot.
Well, technically, the whole block is the neighborhood.
The whole block is
The whole
so the
block is the
whole
neighborhood.
triangular block is the
Yes,
neighborhood?
yes.
Okay. Are there any other lots that comprise, in your professional planning testimony or opinion, the neighborhood, other than the lots within the triangular block? Anything beyond that triangle?
Well, beyond that triangle, to the north of us, on the other side of Broad Street, is the R5 zone, so that's why I didn't go into the R5 zone.
Okay.
To the south of us, I mentioned Milton Avenue, it has some undersized lots there, which technically, I guess is part of the neighborhood.
But if it's part of the neighborhood, did you mention all the lots or only the ones that were undersized?
I was just trying to show that the area has a mixture. It's an R6 zone, but it has a mixture of size lots on it.
I'm just trying to understand, are you
Sure.
including the Milton lots in the neighborhood or not?
In my opinion, the neighborhood is the block, is
Just
a
the triangle.
triangular block.
So excluding the Milton and the other lots you mentioned?
Correct.
Just those
Correct.
With respect to what you have now defined as the applicable neighborhood for professional planning analysis purposes under C2 for this application, have you calculated the lot areas of all of those lots? And if so, can you provide the average lot area and the median lot area for the neighborhood, as well as the average and median lot width for the neighborhood, as well as the building coverage and impervious coverage averages and median for what you define as the applicable neighborhood, the triangular block that we've been talking about?
Let's talk about the lot widths. Again, this is an unusual block because you have properties that front on two streets. So you have lot widths on Broad Street and you have lot widths on Dayton Road. So when you kind of take the average of the 50s and the 40s, you're at 45 feet. You're just in this whole area, you're talking about an average of 45 feet.
Are you including the
Well,
Huntley?
well, again, you do
Please let me
have-
finish, Mr.
I'm
Marucci,
sorry.
thank you, because you
Sorry.
could only take one of us at a time down. Were you including the Huntley Tavern fronting lots as well just now, or? or not those? I'm sorry, I said Huntley Town. Now you know where my mind is, Michael. I apologize, Huntley Road.
I actually did not.
Oh, okay.
I didn't do an actual calculation, but again, I think if you take the whole block in general, I think we're more so in compliance with the 40-foot wide lots on Dayton Road. That's a given. On Broad Street, our property is wider than all the other properties. Our property is 84 feet wide on Broad Street. All the other ones are in the 50s, and you have 80 feet on the property to the
Right,
east
that's
of
at the
us.
frontage, but not at the pinch point, right? Not in the
Pinch
depth.
point is 21 feet.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so the lot, you can't provide us with the average or median lot area or lot width for that triangular block that you've defined as the neighborhood, correct?
I would have to calculate it.
Okay, that's fair. And how about the building coverage and impervious coverage, because those are two variances for existing lot, or proposed lot 801. Have you calculated the building coverage and/or the impervious coverage for what you've defined as the neighborhood, those lots?
Unfortunately,
And for purposes of comparing to an average or median for the subject lots?
unfortunately, I did not. Not for this evening.
Okay. And is a one-car garage as proposed to the other lots in the neighborhood, as you've defined the neighborhood? Do they have garages, and if so, do they have one car, two car, attached, detached? If you know.
Lot 3 has a detached garage.
One car, two car?
Two car.
Two car?
I believe Lot 2 has, I believe it's a one-car garage. Actually, I don't think they have a garage. I'm looking at it. I think it's a one-car garage. Lot 14 does not have a garage.
Right. In your professional opinion, the proposed one-car front entry garage, would that be in character with the neighborhood, and if so, how?
Well, I believe the one-car garage would be sufficient in the sense that RSIS requires 2 parking spaces for a house of this size, and the garage with a parking space in front of it would be sufficient. I don't see a need for a 2-car garage on this property with that size width.
The to be proposed dwelling, the conceptual dwelling on lot 802. We heard the square footage testified to, the footprint, and presumably it would be a 2-story, or could be a 2-story. Based upon that footprint and the 2-story anticipated square footage, do you have an opinion as to how that home would fit in with the character of the balance of the neighborhood as you've defined it? In other words, have you compared that dwelling with the dwellings that exist on all the other lots in that triangular block?
With respect to the Dayton Road side, there's the only house that right now fronts on Dayton Road is on lot 18.
Immediately adjacent.
Has no garage, it's a 1-story dwelling. The proposal, I'm not designing the house, but what I explained was that the proposed dwelling would meet all of the setbacks, building coverage, FAR. With the garage, most likely would be a 2-story house. Would it be out of character? A 2-story house is permitted. It would be the only other house that actually would front on Dayton Road, except for the house across the street. I don't think it would be out of character. As a matter of fact, like I said, the goal in the master plan is to provide housing, modest type housing for beginners, empty nesters, senior citizens. It's that type of housing.
having defined the neighborhood as the entire triangular block, do you have any opinion as to whether that dwelling would be in character with the dwellings fronting on Huntley Road or Broad Street in that triangular block?
Can I interrupt one second? You keep limiting, you limit him to the definition of the neighborhood as the triangle, and I understand that's what he said, but for the purposes of your analysis, you focused on this triangle in terms of comparison of lot sizes, correct?
Yes.
But the neighborhood, when we talk about the character of the neighborhood, for the sake of a C2 variance or for any variance, you're talking about the larger picture, somebody driving down the street and seeing whether that structure or that home or what's being proposed fits within the larger character of the neighborhood. For the sake of your analysis on character of the neighborhood, you're not limiting yourself to the triangle, are you?
But that's why I said that in terms of the larger neighborhood, I mentioned properties on Milton Avenue, on Huntley Road. Again, it's an R6 zone, but there's a mixture of lot sizes and lot widths in that whole area.
So for the building coverage,
If you don't mind, can I sit at this point? Thank you.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought everybody else was done.
No, I've got a couple questions.
I'll see to our board members who have questions. I didn't know.
Refers to this on the
Right.
Sorry about that.
No, of course.
Based on the numbering of the lots on the overall block, is it possible that lot 1 and lot 14 were one lot once upon a time, and perhaps lot 14 is actually not in character of the neighborhood, despite one of the neighbors being here, and that could have spurred the change in the zoning overall?
When you say lot 1 is...
So lot 1 is the lot adjacent to the lot in question, on the
Well,
Broad
that's
Street side,
actually-
and lot
that's-
14
that's actually-
is immediately below it.
You're not getting this, I'm not getting it.
Yep.
It's not correct on the map. That's actually lot 7. Lot 1 is the township lot.
I'm sorry, lot 7 and lot 14.
Yes. I'm sorry, your question was?
Is it possible, based on the numbering of the lots and how they wrap around, and based on the shape of all the lots going to the left of the lot 8 in question, were lot 7 and lot 14 once upon a time one lot, and it's actually lot 14 that is not in keeping with the neighborhood? And maybe that's what spurred some of the zoning?
In my opinion, I'm a land surveyor. As a land surveyor, when I look at that lot 7 and lot 14, I believe that at one time that was one lot, because just looking at it, it looked like they were all through lots. And at some point, it was subdivided. But it was a long time ago.
And as Mr. Burgess pointed out in his review, section 35-9.10D really encourages the town to avoid through lots.
Any other questions of the board? We can move on here, guys? Yeah. All right. Ma'am, do you have any questions of the planner? Any questions of Mr. Ripley?
Looking at these pictures.
I'm sorry, just for the record, we do have to get your name and
Okay,
address
Pat
again.
McFall, 18 Dayton Road. Dayton Road only has 2 houses on it. The blue house and one across the street. That's the neighborhood. If you look, as the planner said, if we looked at Milton Avenue, he said that most of those houses had 50 by 100s. The neighborhood itself, if you look at the first one, this is how the neighborhood looked, single-story, small ranches.
And I'm sorry, you're referencing an exhibit. Which exhibit are you?
His pictures.
Yeah, that's A1, and which, is that the first page, the
First
top
page,
page?
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is how the neighborhood looked, the small ranches. Now, if you look at the triangle, it's an interesting triangle. Most of these were through street, larger lots that you went in on Broad Street and you came out on Dayton Road. No houses were built on Dayton Road on those. Basically, we only have 2 houses on Dayton Road. 18, and then the one across the street, believe it or not, is 31. I don't know why, but that's how.
I'm sorry, number 31?
Number
Okay,
31.
go ahead.
But that's the complexity of the neighborhood. It's small houses. But if we're talking about the neighborhood and going to Milton, they're all 50 by 100. And Huntley Road mostly is that. And if you look at, when I talk to you about the slope, the second picture shows you the slope. Look at the house up on the top and look at that slope.
Just for the record, that's the second page of
Second
Exhibit A1?
page, right.
She's pointing to lot 13.
You see where I'm saying, it's high, and Huntley is even higher, the hill, so that water comes down. But that's what I see with his presentation.
And you said that the home that you live in was built by your parents in 1960?
Yep. Yes,
So maybe that was the point at which that lot was subdivided potentially,
probably.
from 6 to 7.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, do you know if, and if so, when Lot 14, the lot where you live, was subdivided from Lot 7?
I do not. I only know from 1960 on.
Okay, so you don't have any personal knowledge of whether it was subdivided, let alone whether, when it was subdivided?
I know that this is not the first rodeo with this lot. There were many, originally there was a landscaper that lived on Broad Street, and he used the back of that lot for his trucks. That's why it looks like an alley. And quite a few times, my parents even tried to buy that lot in order to put on a 2-car garage, but they were denied because it was not subdividable. Is that a word?
Yeah, sure.
So there we go. That's basically what it is.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
You
Yeah,
say that
Mr.
the
Chairman, it's certainly appropriate for,
Yeah, cross-examine. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. The character, you said a character of the neighborhood is ranches. That's the way it's always been.
There's quite a few of them.
How many of them are ranches in the triangle?
In the triangle. Let me take a look. I think we have a split level.
That's not a ranch.
I know that. I know that. I know in the back of my parents' house, this was a ranch.
Was,
Is. It's still a ranch, a small ranch, the same exact house as what they
and
have.
what are the other houses?
I'm trying to think. One of them might be a 2-story.
Cape Cod?
The one in the front, the Broad Street one, is a Cape Cod.
Okay. And what about the ones, what about these houses over here? What are they?
These houses over here, now let me look for this.
On, what is that? Huntley.
Huntley. This one here was just redone, and I don't know how, but it's now a 2-story with no backyard whatsoever. These are ranches. Ranch on the corner, ranch here. This one might have been, this is what it is.
So out of 14 lots, you've identified 3 or 4 ranches, which means that
Well, this whole,
70 or 80% of the houses are not ranches.
well, listen,
And that-
I'm
and
not
would
saying
mean-
that. I'm
would
not
mean-
saying that.
You're not?
Um,
Okay.
because
I'm
we,
saying it.
we're talking about the neighborhood with Huntley.
Out
At-
of the 14.
I'm sorry, I need
I
one
know,
speaker. I
I'm trying to
can't get
ask my question first before you answer it. Out of the 14 houses, you've identified 3 or 4 ranches, 4 maximum, 3 certainly, which means out of the 14 houses, 70+% of them are not ranches. So would it be fair to say that just within the triangle, not the neighborhood at large, there's a nice mix of houses? So the character of the neighborhood is a mix of different types of houses.
It could be, but let me say
Well,
this.
is it or not?
The ones on Milton, most are ranches.
I'm not talking about Milton, I'm talking about your triangle.
You're talking about
Triangle
the
here.
triangle? Okay, this is a ranch,
Right.
this is a ranch.
The question was, you've identified 3 ranches, maybe 4, which means about 70% of the houses within the triangle are not ranches.
Here we go.
So would
1,
you
2,
say then
3,
that there's
4,
a nice
5,
mix
6,
of houses
7,
on the
8, 9,
triangle?
10. 11. There's 11 houses on this triangle.
right?
Okay, this is a ranch 1, this is a ranch 2, This is a Ranch 3. I'm a Ranch 4. This is a Cape is 5. This is a Ranch 6. This one, I can't remember what this is. This is, I think, a 2-story, and this is a split.
Okay, so possibly 50%
Possibly,
are ranch, possibly.
possibly.
So then the other houses are different. So would you say that within the triangle, there is a nice mix of different style houses?
There is.
Okay.
But are we
That's all I
talking,
wanted to ask you.
are we talking about different style houses, or are we talking about the lot?
I'm asking you a question. We're trying to talk about whether this immediate neighborhood and the larger neighborhood, the character of that neighborhood is not strictly ranches.
It's 50%, I'll give you that.
It's not strictly ranches.
But are we talking about the subdivision or the style of the houses?
You were talking about the
Are we
style of
talking about
housing.
the fact that
Okay.
we have
Let's
these
talk-
that are all 50 by 100s, these are 50 by 100s, and we're going into 40s?
You were talking about the style of houses. I'm trying to establish two different things, which is what we've done with our experts here. One, that there is a nice mix of houses and the character of the neighborhood is not limited to ranches. The other part of it is that there are numerous and many substandard lots within the larger neighborhood. On Broad Street, on Grove Street, on Milton, on Huntley, on, I don't know the name of this street over here. And the character of the neighborhood is not necessarily large lots or through lots. There are only a few through lots, and there are a whole bunch of very narrow lots. So a 40-foot lot is not out of character with the neighborhood.
But I don't
You
know,
live on a 40-foot lot.
right, but I don't know what the size of these are.
Okay, but you can see.
I don't know
they're
what
narrow.
these are. I don't know what these are, but these are certainly bigger than what is proposed here.
Thank you, Ms. Winfrey. Thank you very much. And when we're finished testimony, you can come back up again and give us your thoughts and opinions on this as a summary. And so we'll, at this point, any questions from board professionals, from attorney, from board members? I think we're basically doing all of our testimony at this point. We're ready to have your summary.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, did you want to allow the public to have public comment, notwithstanding the fact that
Yes.
she was already sworn in and she provided some?
Do you want to have comment before Mr. Bonner's?
Generally, the appropriate procedure would be for the applicant's counsel to have the opportunity to do the summation after the public comment,
That's a good point.
in fairness to the applicant.
So, Mr. McFall, would you like to come back up again to just give us your thoughts and ideas? And this is a point at which you can tell us about your feelings, your opinions, and your thoughts. They're not
Okay.
restricted to the testimony of the various witnesses.
And I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but I did note Mr. Burgess did have on page 2 the possible need for a fence variance. I just want to make sure there are no other variances at issue in this application.
The fence that's over the property line, I believe.
Yeah, chain link fence in excess of maximum permitted 4-foot height limitation in the front yard area along Dayton Road. Is that a variance that needs to be obtained in fairness to the applicant?
No, actually, it's a pre-existing condition.
Okay. As far as we know, it's a pre-existing condition prior to the ordinance requiring, and therefore, it's just, would be a continuation. It's not exacerbated. Technically, no new variance relief would be required, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then we are covered. My apologies.
Okay, Mr. McFall, thank you.
The same name and address, and you remain under oath.
Okay, Patricia McFall, 18 Dayton Road. I looked at the slip that I got in the mail, and I read it very carefully, because if I look at it, you have a minimum of 6,000 feet as a requirement. Lot 801 is going to be 5,500 feet. Lot 802 is going to be 5,200 feet, so that doesn't meet the requirement. I also looked at the fact that Lot 801, basically, the maximum coverage is 40%, and you're already up to 65%, that if you propose to divide those lots. I also looked at the fact that I talked about the drainage. The history is, in 1960, my parents bought this house. The neighborhood was such that, as I said, there was a landscaper that was in the front on Broad Street, and he used the 18 Dayton Road area to park his trucks. So that's what happened there. My mother had to put up a fence because of the constant noise, etc. But if and when this is subdivided, what will happen to the value of my property? I don't think so, because it will look like sardines.
I'm sorry,
Comment,
yeah,
please.
that's not appropriate.
Will look like sardines. So that's all I have to say about this. You can do what you're going to do, but you're going to change the neighborhood, the street, and the fact that the drainage is going to be a major, major problem. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here. All right, Mr. Bond.
Excuse me. It's allergy season. I think we heard a good explanation of how the subdivision will occur from our engineer, description of the variances, and the bases for the variances as described by our planner. Acknowledging that your ordinance discourages through lots, the variances are largely pre-existing. The character of the neighborhood is different types of houses, largely on narrow lots. Yes, there are some wider lots and some larger lots, but if you're talking about the overall character of the neighborhood, any house built on that lot would fit within the neighborhood. You have smaller homes. Your master plan encourages development of homes for empty nesters and, younger families, and this is a perfect location for that. And you could be adding to the housing stock of Summit, welcoming a new young family. The discussion about the impervious coverage, I believe the two engineers arrived at an understanding that the any additional runoff created by the impervious variance created on lot 8.01 can be mitigated by stormwater runoff facilities. What will we call them? Detention, overflow. Thank you. And I think that we reviewed all the reports, the staff report, engineering, Mr. Burgess's report, and we've accommodated their comments as best we can. And I think this is a good application. I think you have Dr. Diaz that lives on the property and wants to continue living on there, and this is something he'd like to do with the property that he owns, and he thinks it meets the master plan and the goals of your ordinance. And I would request that you vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bond. All right, members of the board, any thoughts and ideas? I'll just say from my thoughts, when I first looked at this, I was a little confused by it. The more I studied it, and the more I looked at the adjacent lot, 1418, the address of 18 on the street, the more in keeping in a neighborhood that I thought it was. This I'm talking about 18 Dayton Road now. More in keeping when you look at the 40-foot rhythms going down Dayton Road, it's pretty I don't know, Joe may have some additional thoughts and ideas about the idea of through lots and why they're a problem and why they could give us the board a little more
And why they
education.
can
Why they may be a problem could give us the board a little bit of education on the through lot. But my sense is that it's a little more complicated than I thought when I looked at it. I'm a little more inclined to move in the favor direction just based on the fact that the neighborhood is as complicated and as small and varied, and the housing is small and varied as it is. So, but I want to have board members, their thoughts and ideas. So, you want to wish to speak up, Jay?
I'll jump in. I too was confused. I think I still am a little bit. There've been so many. I'm pretty good with numbers. There've been so many floating around, but we've got somewhere between 8 variances required and 14 in Joe's report. And I think I understand most of it. But I think it's unfair to say the neighborhood, the lots on Dayton Road represent the neighborhood because there's only one house that runs on Dayton Road. All of those homes front with 50 feet, not 40, on Broad Street. So to say that a 40-foot frontage is appropriate because the other lots on Dayton Road are 40 feet I disagree with that notion. I think this neighborhood is defined as far more, a neighborhood is typically, in my mind, defined as far more than a triangle. Milton Avenue is across the street. Huntley Road is literally across a relatively narrow residential street. That's the neighborhood in my mind. It incorporates a triangle, but it incorporates much more than that. We heard, for example, other lots and the planner rattled off, well, 55 feet, another lot was 55 feet, another lot was 55 feet. There's a big difference between 55 feet and 40 feet, in my opinion. None of the other properties have front-facing garages, I don't think. I might have missed one or two when I drove around. The front-facing garages are discouraged in town, and certainly that is not in keeping with the neighborhood. Individually, none of these things are terribly burdensome, but in total, I think this represents we have zoning rules, and we have for a reason, and we grant variances when they're appropriate. When there's a circumstance that requires a variance. Those of you, some of us have been here doing this for 10 years now, and we've done this regularly. I think in this case, it feels to me like to accommodate this subdivision requires more variances that in total represent a deviation from our intended use, intended zoning. And again, because I don't think you can look at 40-foot frontages on Dayton Road as the relevant comparison. There's only one other house on that side of Dayton Road. So I am disinclined to favor this, the granting of somewhere between, I think, the applicant said 8, and I think Joe's report has a few more of those that still.
If I may, some of those are pre-existing conditions.
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you, Joe. Yes, I acknowledge that. Many of them, well, half a dozen were pre-existing conditions. That's true. But by granting this, well, yeah, I'll stop.
So Joe, from the planner's perspective, tell us a little bit about what you think about through lots and why they're less desirable perhaps than lots that are not.
Well, this planning board made the determination when we were adjusting the zoning ordinance a couple of years ago that we were to discourage through lots. Now, the reason I was questioning Mr. Marucci about a larger area is because I do not think that the neighborhood is just the triangle. And some of the lots, there's a wide variety of lot widths in the area, but I don't think you just focus on those that are 40 or 45 or 50 feet wide. It's a very diverse neighborhood in terms of dimension. But to answer your question, there had been determination that you did not like through lots for a variety of reasons. One is because it has a propensity for having dual access points, which you wanted to discourage, if I recall those conversations correctly. And in many instances, it was just this situation that if you accept the idea that they can be subdivided, you're in all likelihood going to end up with undersized in relation to the ordinance requirement. And that, I think, is really what you need to focus on here. Now, is there a substantial impairment to the intent of the plan, and a substantial detriment to the public good by virtue of allowing this lot to be subdivided? Will this in turn encourage some of these other lots who sell houses, on Broad Street? Will this encourage other proposals to subdivide these through lots? And you would start to grant more and more variances to enable that situation to occur. It is one of the reasons why I did point out that this is a large lot in comparison to the neighborhood, but by virtue of the impervious coverage factor, if you were going to comply with the impervious coverage requirement for this lot, you need about 9,000 square feet to comply, and you could not subdivide this property. And those are the things you got to balance. I mean, the whole focus, I think, of the planner's testimony was that this is a C2 variance relief. And C2 is that there are public benefits that accrue from the grant of the variances. And you have to decide what are the public benefits that result from this relief that's being sought. I think the primary one that we heard was that there are drainage improvements to be made. You have to make the determination, is that sufficient to allow the extent of the nonconformity that's being proposed? Now, in terms of Mr. Briggerhoff's comment about counting variances, there is in fact case law that says you don't count variances. You have to look at the magnitude of the application rather than counting each individual one, and a certain number is too many, and something less than that is okay.
Magnitude would be a far better word for me, the magnitude of the variances, in my mind, prevented the ability. When I think of what a C2 is, granting the variance substantially outweigh any potential detriments. Benefits of granting the variance substantially outweigh any potential detriments. I guess I just wasn't there yet. I didn't agree with that in this case.
Well, I'm not arguing one side or the other. I'm trying to be as broad as possible so you all understand the various issues that you should be looking at when you're looking at this kind of an application. One of the things I did find troublesome is we don't have any information about the building or impervious coverage variances being sought in relation to the neighborhood. However you define the neighborhood, there hasn't been any information on that. And that I found somewhat troublesome, because I don't see how you decide they're entitled to that relief when the ordinance talks about identifying the overall character of the neighborhood. That's part of the character, and you really haven't heard anything here.
One of the concepts that, comes about through urban design is something that we used to talk about missing teeth. When you go down a street, you go down a neighborhood, whether it's urban or not suburban, and there's something that's not the same rhythm, the same pattern, which is what this lot presents. As you go down the street, you say, wow, that kind of looks weird, what's going on there? So to me, from the urban design perception, from contextual perception, it looks odd to me. To me, it's a missing teeth. There's a sense that you want to put something there to create the rhythm on the street. So that's one thought.
And that is another reason that we were discussing a couple years ago about discouraging through lots and in some respect encouraging the development of what I'll call that rear parcel. And you just have to weigh that against the testimony that you heard, and if you found it persuasive or not.
Other members of the board, questions, comments?
I mean, I agree with what Mr. Brinkerhoff was saying, and I think it's really challenging to ascertain if it is in character with the neighborhood, however it's defined, with a proposal that's not a proposal for the house, right? We're trying to understand how a house would fit on that lot. It's proposed, but who's to say if we grant the variances that whomever decides to build something there, what else are they going to ask for when they actually come up with a real plan? And we don't have a final grading plan because this is all kind of hypothetical in some sense. That when you kind of put all of that together, it just seems like there's not enough pieces that have been answered.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I am torn on this. I could see with more information that I could see how this could be approved. I think there's just a lot of unknowns about 802 and what's going there. I do think there could be public benefits, though, with drainage.
And certainly getting rid of the through lot, right? I mean, that would be a benefit, but.
Yeah. So, yeah, I am torn, but I don't think we have enough, I don't have enough to say at this point.
Any other board members, thoughts, comments?
I think so, sure. It's an interesting idea.
I passed a note to Jay in this, and I don't even know if this is, I said, is this lot a candidate for a conservation easement at all, as opposed to a division? Is this lot a candidate for a conservation easement as opposed to a division? Because it's sort of unusable in the way that it is, but it possibly adds in terms of drainage and with proper vegetation, beautification and, again, absorption of water in the neighborhood. And maybe a way to take some tax burden away from the owner.
You're proposing that the
I
city...
don't know,
would
I don't know if
acquire
it's the answer, but I'm wondering, has it been thought about at all?
it? I would not think it was, but maybe it could be. I don't know. Mr. Bonner, it looks like you're prepared to... You want to say?
Don't want to breach protocol, but I was speaking to the applicant. He was wondering if it would be appropriate to carry this before a vote, and he could explore and possibly provide the additional information that everybody's asking for. Design a house, come up with hard numbers and better calculations on the drainage and things like that.
How would the board feel about that? You want to see the numbers again, or see the numbers we haven't seen as an ability to weigh decisions, or people feel like they're...
Some more detail on the house might be helpful. Yes,
That's what we're talking about now.
I think perhaps, Joe, if they could answer some of the questions that you and council were asking with regard to the averages of whether it's lot area and/or specifics related to coverage and those sorts of things.
I think it would be helpful.
Would be helpful, another level of analysis, perhaps.
I mean, from a legal perspective, I guess the challenge is that once the lot is divided, you still have to figure out what will be built on that new lot. And it sounds like there are a lot of questions about, once the city gives permission to do that, then now we have a whole nother issue of what then goes there.
Yeah, they have to come back again, effectively.
And
Maybe
there are a
not
lot
to
of
us,
questions
not
about
to us, but come for a building permit, I
Yeah.
guess, technically. Yeah, grading permit, building permit. That it wouldn't come to us.
Mm.
So applicant...
To that extent, the fact that we get a drawing or some elevations and site plans and things, those wouldn't be binding, would they? Or-
You can make, if I may.
What's that?
If I may, I think you were going to say the same thing I was about to say.
We
But you
often
can go
do,
first.
but hey, you say it first.
Okay. Because of the variances associated with this application, you are always entitled to impose certain conditions on an application. So even if you don't end up, let's say they present a house, and you don't end up with that exact same house, but you could impose conditions to make sure something similar to what, I'm assuming you would like it then, similar to that would be built on the site, and not something totally different.
And if I understood correctly, there was also an interest expressed by applicant's counsel based upon the deliberations thus far to be able to provide answers to some of the questions that myself and Mr. Burgess asked with respect to lot area, lot width, vis-a-vis what the applicant's planner characterized as the applicable neighborhood, and that type of information to the extent it might help the board. The board legally has the discretion, not having completed deliberations and voted yet, or made a motion, the board can carry and allow the applicant to reopen. And of course, members of the public will be afforded the continued full and fair opportunity to question any further testimony and continue to make sworn public comment in favor of or against the application if that were to be the case. So it's the discretion, legally it's the discretion of the board as to whether or not to accept the request by applicant's counsel to carry.
So, Mr. Bonner, you're officially requesting to carry this and provide us further information either next meeting or the meeting after that, as you gather that information. bring
That's
it
correct.
back to us.
And to have the board reopen the hearing, correct?
Yes.
I think that's a reasonable thing to do. I think there's some things that we could learn from this. And how do you all feel?
We can take a straw poll, that way it's not a vote of the board, if you wish, Mr. Chairman, as to, unless it seems to be an overwhelming, you might not even need a straw
Does
poll.
anyone object to having the applicant do more work, come back and carry this again? Any objections to that? So it seems like you have the ability to do that.
Now, we do, of course, under the municipal land use law, if we're going to carry this matter, we need to carry it to a date, time, and place certain. I suspect I know the time and place. I don't know the date. So we'll have to have that, and also, of course, we'll have to have an extension of time to act through the end of whatever month that may be. Provided in an email is fine.
You are talking about our caseload?
Yeah, we are starting to consider what's in the pipeline, yes. And at the moment, while there was discussion, no application has been submitted, which makes the November 28th meeting open.
And the question then becomes, of course, can the additional information be provided?
I think it might take some time,
So the following
possibly
meeting,
engage an
December,
architect.
whatever that might be.
December, okay, that's good.
I'm sorry, you're saying 11/28 is too soon?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say 2 months might be better.
Just working on that date, give us a second.
Would that be the 12th?
I think it's the 21st.
December
No, I think it's
26th.
the December.
What do we do with the
No, we gotta look at our.
It looks like the 21st, December 21st.
That's our next meeting? the
December
21st?
planning board meeting.
December 21st, Wednesday.
Okay.
Oh, it's not our usual night.
No.
But it has been advertised.
Right, advertised, no, it's on the regular schedule, yeah. Just want to make, for the benefit of the public, not our usual night. Are you asking to carry this matter to, without further notice, to Wednesday, December 21, 7:30 PM, this same location?
Yes.
And you'll provide an extension of time to act through the end of the month of December, which would
Yes, I'll get that to you
coincide with
tomorrow.
the end of the year, wouldn't it? And you'll send me an email in that regard.
Yep.
Okay, and does the public understand that this matter is being carried without further notice to December 21, Wednesday, 7:30 PM, the same municipal building? And the hearing at that time will be reopened for all participants, and we can proceed accordingly.
Okay. Thank you for your consideration.
There's no need for a
Before
motion to
we,
carry.
before we
There's no
adjourn
need
tonight,
for a motion to carry.
Well, we could do it to, we should, the formality of a motion, a second, and a voice vote for carrying should take place.
all right, someone make a motion to carry this to the 21st?
No, so moved.
Thank you again.
And all-
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
So before we dismiss tonight, I wanted to turn the floor over to Chris Dorr. While I'm taking the floor over to you, I spoke with Chris earlier today. He was kind enough to call me and tell us that he is retiring, moving on to better
December
things.
21st, you got All leaves are canceled.
December 28th.
And he would like to introduce his colleague, who I think will be our new representative.
Could you repeat her name, Chris?
Pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
We assume you're an engineer and not an aerospace engineer, civil
Yes,
engineer.
I have about 19 years of civil engineering experience in various fields, private industry as well as public industry. Definitely done planning board reviews with, with Chris and others at Colliers Engineering. And I've been on the other side of the board too, where I had to present and prepare and present for reviews. Also. So, and I graduated from New Jersey Institute of Technology.
We've heard of that.
Okay.
So Chris, tell us,
Does your license remain in good standing?
Currently, yes.
Did we scare you off tonight?
No, that's very interesting. Yeah, no, I have a New Jersey PE license and also other ones that kind of defer for now. Those are some others.
I'll defer to the board chair to,
We welcome you and look forward to working with you.
Thank
Chris,
you.
I asked Chris if he was going off to Tahiti surfing. He said it wasn't quite that retirement crazy, but tell us any ideas where you're headed, what are you doing?
We're just, travel and grandkids, and that's pretty much it.
All right.
Hobbies.
Not going to work.
No.
That's the key.
Well,
I might bother him.
yeah.
You're getting a call on December 20th.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you, Chris, for all the great
Thank you.
advice you've given us over the years, and we really appreciate everything.
Thanks, Chris.
We followed you through the Colliers change, and glad we did. So thank you very much for all the great things you've done for the city of Summit. We appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
And at this point, can I entertain? a
Just
motion
real
to
quick, though,
adjourn?
this was Chris Nicola's last night. Unfortunately, he did
Oh.
not feel well.
Yeah, that's right.
He did
Oh.
get married between
Yes.
last meeting and this, but on his behalf, I know around the office, he's taken this position very seriously. It spawned a career in zoning. He's
Yeah.
loved serving you all and
Yeah, it's been
took
great.
it with great care and passion. So on his behalf, thank you for taking care of him and vice versa. And also, at our next meeting, we will have Lady Stephanie joining as the secretary, and
Yeah.
you will equally be in good hands. So, thank you for your graciousness to Chris and your expected graciousness to Stephanie, so thank
Stephanie,
you
is there
all.
any chance that the labels that came to our office, to our homes on the manila folders, did you handwrite those labels?
I did.
I thought so.
Well, hold on, my question will not answer, it depends.
The point is that I could read them. And so I knew there was a new
Yes,
sheriff.
the hieroglyphics was, yes, understood.
So anyway, we look forward to working with you as
Thank
well,
you.
Stephanie.
I look forward to it as well.
All right, meeting is adjourned, thanks. everyone.
Love, yes.
Now,